Let's do the damn thing.
Oh, you know what
what time it is. It's time to take it to the Birdland. It's about to go down. Hope y'all ready. Yeah, let's go. Come and roll with me to the Birdland. Friends got to giving you the word, man. Any other BS is absurd, man. Sports talking, they give it to you firsthand. They can talk Terps, they can talk O's. Yeah, they both lit, that's how it goes. Baltimore squad, Ravens and Bo. Better tune in, here gonna the show. Birdland, Birdland, Birdland BS. Birdland, Birdland, Birdland BS.
It's all about that BS, baby.
What's up, BSers?
What's up, peeps?
We got a full house, full studio. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
It's been a minute since all of us have been here. Fred.
Sorry, guys.
Scott. Ryan. Might sound a little different. He's got a cold. James and Drew. All in the house tonight. We got a lot to cover on this week's show. We're covering everything. Ravens, Orioles, Terps, the rundown, the whole nine.
This was a longer-ass outline earlier.
Yeah. Well, a lot of things happened in the last couple hours. Steve Biscotti broke his media silence, talks Harbaugh extension, Lamars future deal, and if he considered selling the team. So there's a lot to cover with that.
Yeah, and we're also going to talk about the Bobby Wagner rumors that have been floating around, and a little bit of talk in recent local mock draft selections as well.
Yeah. Orioles are now 10 days away from opening series, 13 days from the home opener. Any surprises so far this spring? We're going to talk a little bit about that too.
Excited to get into that one. The Terps, they get their guy to lead the Hoops squad, and you guys are going to give us a little bit of a preview into what you've been talking about and some of the cream of the crop of the programs.
Yeah, man, a lot going on at the University of Maryland. Some good, some not so good. We'll talk about that. And this week's rundown, we're talking a reunion of sorts in New England, a familiar switch from quarterback to tight end, the Final Four, and overtime rules changing in the NFL again. You know, because like the annual thing that happens year after year. But before we do too much, we do want to remind you, the team over at MD Crash have been telling you about for the last 2 years. Well, they've expanded. More lawyers handling a much broader spectrum of cases now, still handling all your auto accidents and injuries at work, of course. But now the team at Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon can help you with family law issues from divorce to custody to even child support. If you save this number now, they're going to give you a chance at winning some tickets to an Orioles game coming up. So save this number now, 667-220-6500. You can call or text them anytime for your needs. Again, that number is 667-220-6500. Get the team at Bowers, Hassan, and Herndon on the case for you. All right, Scott, it's time for some Flock Talk. Before we get into all the news that we got to cover, man, it's happy birthday to the Ravens, man.
Happy birthday to the Ravens. And Sharon Sherry.
That's right. Happy birthday to Sharon Sherry if you're out there, Sherry. I'm sure you are. If not, you will be at some point tonight because you always are. One of our biggest supporters. But for the Ravens, man, 26 years ago today, Art Modell announced the impending move from Cleveland to Baltimore. 2 Super Bowls later, we thank you, Mr. Modell and family, for bringing football back to Baltimore.
Thank you, Cleveland, for fucking up for many years.
Yeah.
Suck it, Cleveland.
Still, exactly.
Right. Here we are many years later. Cleveland's still in the news with stupid decisions, but we're going to talk about that later, too.
Well, one guy that stayed out of the news with the Ravens for a little while now, and we've been clamoring for it. The Ravens, the media has been clamoring for it. The Ravens flock has been
And I don't know what happened.
I know exactly what happened.
And
Ryan, don't touch it. Ryan, don't touch anything. Don't touch anything.
Okay.
I know exactly
Just
what
found
happened.
my camera angles and then it killed it.
Yep, no.
We're back? No.
Yeah, we're going to be going back and forth. Carry this for a second.
All right. I mean, can they still hear us?
They should still be able to hear us, yes.
You guys let us know if you can hear us.
I don't know what's happening right now.
I know exactly what's happening.
These little malfunctions yet, so this is
just hang on.
something new.
Oh.
No,
Just talk.
All right. Well, what Scott was alluding to is that Steve Biscotti finally broke his media silence, which has been over a year now since we've heard from Biscotti. He ended up speaking with a small group of Baltimore reporters today and broke. One of the things that I really like about Steve Biscotti as an owner, right, as a person, is he's very candid. He doesn't hold things back. He speaks from the heart and he speaks from the chest, and he doesn't mince words. One of the topics he talked about was the extension for John Harbaugh, which they announced. They signed him to a 3-year extension through 2025. I know a lot of people are going to have mixed reviews on this, especially even in this room amongst us five, right? There's certain people.
Go to James last then on this.
Yeah, right. We'll talk to James on this. Hey, listen, no matter how you chop it, you look at the numbers, he is still one of the best coaches overall in the league. He's been doing it for a very long time. I understand the narrative of he hasn't won anything in a while. He hasn't won since the Super Bowl. He's only had 2 playoff wins in the last, since 2012, right? And it's been a while, and he hasn't had a whole lot of playoff success. But at the end of the day, the Ravens are always in competition. They're always there in the thick of things for the playoff run. I'm good with Harbaugh. I'm a Harbaugh guy. You guys know that. I've always liked him. Do I agree with everything he does, especially his in-game coaching and those decisions? No.
Yes.
No, I don't agree with everything he does, James. But I haven't been presented with a guaranteed better option, and that's why I'm good with John Harbaugh being around for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think I need to come off mute from fixing that. I think it makes sense.
You're going to need a shot after all that is what you're going to need.
Yeah, I am after that.
I just got the Chris Rock slap for breaking down the whole set.
Not going there. I want to, but we're not going there.
Well, the chat room's just talking about it without us. So.
Yeah, exactly.
You got to hold off to the after hours.
Yeah, hold on to the after hours.
But no, I think we talked about this when it happened, right? It made sense with everything that happened, with the injuries, with the issues. I think it makes sense for them to go ahead and sign him. Did I agree with all the other moves that they made?
Yeah, that's what it was. There was a titty on screen, so it was just black Sorry.
Ryan has flashed the camera before.
I mean, mine are about a B cup at this point, so maybe.
But no, I think it absolutely it made sense for all the issues that have happened over the past few years that were a little bit out of control and out of his control, especially last year. Last year, we thought this team was in contendership, right? You have all the injuries, and I think it was it Drew? Was it you that posted that picture of the war and everything?
I'm not really good with graphs, but it was a graph of. You basically you got to cross down the middle. And one side was injuries, but okay war. One was no injuries or was fairly healthy. Well, the core the Ravens were in was injuries and lowering the war, and then the clusters all here. The Ravens were up here.
Right.
Well, it was so insane. You couldn't barely see the Ravens on the graph.
You had to look for them because you're there's a random team up over here.
Well, here's the thing. The reporters asked Biscotti about the 6 straight losses to end the season. He was pretty candid. He said, I was good emotionally with it because I kind of didn't think we necessarily deserved to be 8-3 anyway. I thought we had gotten very fortunate. I didn't have real high hopes of a playoff run when you're that depleted. And that's what I mean by him being very open and very candid, because that's exactly what all of us that are realists thought.
Exactly.
The Ravens had no business.
Sorry, absolutely not. Bring it over here. You all told me, a shit-ass fan, when I told you to fold it up and get a better draft pick. You fight till the end.
You fight till the end.
You keep playing. The owner said he didn't think he belonged to the playoffs, so they should be.
He didn't say that means tank.
No, he did.
That is not what he said.
It would have been a much better situation if we tanked.
No,
we lost.
That is not what at all. His expectations weren't there,
and everything would be fine.
Exactly what he said. His expectations weren't high, which none of us had high expectations when we had all the injuries. We were all blown away at the fact that Lamar single-handedly carried them to an 8-3 point.
And
but then the wheels fell off.
That's the thing is to argue his point the same way, right? It's one of those things. He's saying I was surprised we were 8-3. On paper, he was basically saying they didn't even deserve to be 8-3, and the way that they played and the injuries they had. But he also knows, realistically, they won those games because of the quarterback that they had.
Right.
And we're going to get into some comments that he had about that later.
God
but
knows how much that dude's going to make.
The whole point, sticking with just the Harbaugh situation, I think it makes sense that they signed him to that extension.
And he said, no interest in having him go lame duck on me here. It's not fair to him. I think John's grown and grown and grown. It's kind of interesting. I don't feel like I'm just signing up the same guy. So what he's saying is that over the years, he's seen John Harbaugh evolve as a coach, and he does feel like that every time he re-signs him, he's bringing some new perspective or something new to the game, and his coaching style has developed.
I thought he just got a contract last year. I thought they extended him last year.
No, there was rumors about the contract extension happening. It didn't happen until now.
I was with you too. It did come out, but apparently maybe they must have been talk behind the scenes, like, well, look, I want, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let's not, because it was like,
It was imminent that it was going to get done.
this coming season would have been his last. So the news got out there that they gave him like a 1-year extension.
Right.
So they just went ahead and made it 3 years instead of.
Exactly.
Yeah, well,
It's 3 days too long for James.
Money on the wrong thing.
Well, then the other obviously popular topic that everybody wants to hear him talk about is Lamar. And he said, without a QB you believe in, life stinks as an NFL owner and as a fan base. We appreciate Lamar. All I know is that his teammates love him and the front office loves him. We'll pay him when he's ready. So, this to me just reiterates what we've said. The Ravens have put forth the effort.
Their cards are on the table.
To sign him. They're open to him walking in and getting a deal done. They've made that clear. It's on Lamar at this point. He said Lamar's approach to a deal, it's unique as hell. The kid is so obsessed with winning a Super Bowl that I think deep down, he doesn't think he's worthy. I think he wants that to say, now I deserve to be on top. And that doesn't surprise me because Lamar just seems like an out-of-the-box kind of guy. Doesn't seem like, I understand, and we've all said this, and I've said it, that he is about his money. That's why he goes about things the way he goes about with the not having an agent, the whole clothing line, like all of that
He's
stuff.
got, just so you know, I looked it up because I was doing some research on some other stuff that we're going to go over next week, actually. But he's got like 6 or 7 different LLCs that he's a VP in some
whole
way,
entertainment program.
He's got
Like, this
an
whole thing.
entertainment program. It's celebrating his birthday this weekend, by the way. They're the
Right.
main ones behind this. And his mom is the CEO of a lot of these companies.
so awesome.
So he's looking to diversify that portfolio, which is why I think he's not necessarily worried about it at this moment because he's doing other things that are still offsetting that, and he's focusing on his game, which is why we continue to see the videos come out.
They just
right.
gave a guy that sat out an entire season and is getting charged with 22 sexual assaults. $270 million. You don't need to diversify shit. He's gonna get paid over $300 million and be able to just let that money make money forever and not worry about companies.
He talked about the whole Deshaun Watson. Biscotti's impact of Deshaun Watson's deal with Cleveland on Jackson talks. He said, it's like, damn, I wish they hadn't guaranteed the whole contract. I don't know that he should have been the first guy to get a fully guaranteed contract. To me, that's something that is groundbreaking, and it'll make negotiations harder with others, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to play that game. We shall see. And the reason I say that is because who are we fucking talking about? We're talking about the Cleveland Browns. We're talking about Deshaun Watson. Anybody with half a brain knows that deal was stupid to begin with.
We talked about that
and
last
that's all they got to do is go to the negotiations and say, no, that's off the fucking table. We're talking about the Cleveland Browns. Get out of here with that. Nobody else is giving. Now, the next follow-up that does that better not be the Ravens, 1, and 2, if it is, then things could change at that point. But I don't think necessarily the Deshaun Watson guaranteed contract is going to impact Lamar Jackson. That's just my take on. That's my opinion.
It may, but I don't think it's going to have the impact that people think it's going to because the realistic side
He's
of it.
going to get a lot of guaranteed money, but not the whole
ownership
contract.
and GMs are going to look at everybody and go, Cleveland's dumb. They guaranteed a contract to a guy that hadn't played in a year and a half and might not play at all this year. We'll see. He might even, who knows if he gets a whole season in at all, if he does start playing. There's a lot of question marks. That's on them. That's for being dumb. That still doesn't offset the average of the average value per quarterback.
Right.
It's not going to offset it by that much.
This is just Cleveland ownership and GM going all in on a guy, and again, it's a stupid deal, especially with somebody with these kind of counts still pending.
Fred, you said there, take us to the negotiation table.
Right.
There is no negotiation table. His negotiation style is silence. They're negotiating versus themselves, which is why they've had to stop and just be like, we're waiting for your response, because they send offer after offer, and it is radio silence in Lamar's camp. I truly believe Chuck Summers out here saying, when's he or who's not ready to get paid? I think he's not. I think he wants to play out his franchise tags. I think he wants to hit free agency, and he may come back to the Ravens after free agency. But I think he wants that show, his name on ESPN every day. We're on Lamar Watch. We have all these bidding.
He's never to me been that me kind of guy. Is he about his money? Yes, but he's never been, like we've talked about it before, as he is a transcending athlete, right, across all sports. But you don't see him with all these crazy sponsorship deals. He had the one with Oakley, and he had one with there was two of them. It was Oakley and I can't think of the other one. It was two. But you don't see him like you see Patrick Mahomes. You don't see him like you saw all these big name players, because that's not who he is. And I don't think, character-wise, I don't think that's who he is. And to your point, the whole Kirk Cousins approach, because that's basically what you're describing, is what we talked about last week.
Kirk Cousins, and then at the end, LeBron James.
So Biscotti did have comments about that. He said, Kirk Cousins did it that way. What if Lamar says that? I'll play on the 5th year, I'll play on the franchise, I'll play on another franchise, and then you can sign me, and that gives me 3 years to win the Super Bowl, so you can make me a $60 million quarterback, because that's where it will be 4 years from now. That might be the case, but I don't talk to Lamar. It's not my role. I don't know that answer. He could very well be going down that hole, but it's a whole lot of gambling that he is doing on himself, right? It worked out for Kirk Cousins, but that doesn't happen rarely. That's why we point to Kirk Cousins, because it doesn't happen that way that often.
It doesn't happen that rarely, but here's the deal. The other side to that is, right, Biscotti, and part of the reason he says, it's not on me, because he entrusts.
He entrusts in the guys that he pays to do that.
Exactly, he pays them to do that. But he also, from that statement, it sounds like he's basically saying, well, I don't care either way, because if Lamar bets on himself and wins, we win. Because if he bets on himself and wins and gets a Super Bowl in the next 3 years, guess what Steve Bisciotti's got? Right. Another Super Bowl ring. He's happy with that. All the things that come with that, all the playoff games, all the extra sponsorships, all that stuff, everything that comes with it. And then, yes, you can be willing to pay him, because everybody's going to be paying attention to Lamar when that time comes.
The only time I get in panic mode, and James and I were talking about this, and James, I'll let you comment on it too. The only time I become in panic mode is by the end of year 1 of the franchise tag. If there's not a deal done by that point, and you're going into your last year of eligibility of keeping him around, that's when you really have to start thinking about the other end. You have to start thinking about potentially trading him and getting whatever kind of value it is, 2 first-round, 3 first-round picks, whatever that value is, to a team that is putting a contract in place. I know a lot of people are out there saying, the Miami Dolphins is where he's going to go because he's from Florida. Tyreek Hill's down there now. It makes so much sense. And that could be the case in a couple years from now. But I still believe in my heart of hearts, and this isn't me just being a homer or me just being a Lamar fan, I really do believe a deal gets done. Will it happen this year? I seriously doubt it. Even Biscotti asked about the possibility of Lamar Jackson not signing an extension this year, unless he has a change of heart and calls Eric and says, I'm ready. But it's like Eric can't keep calling him and say, hey, Lamar, you really need to get in here and get this thing done. They've done their due diligence. Yeah. They've tried to make the attempt. The ball is 100% in Lamar's court, but just because he hasn't signed a deal yet does not mean his days in Baltimore are numbered. Does not necessarily mean that. He could just be betting on himself for a bigger return. That's all it is.
Go ahead, James.
Like I said earlier, I'm just letting you guys know he ain't signing in Baltimore. Like Steve is doing the right thing, saying like that. They made an offer. He's not responding, or he didn't like it. Something bothered him. But when Watson got that money, I think he's got to be reaching out and find out who his agent is and say, hey, I'm going to get some guaranteed money too like that. But if a deal hasn't been done with all this stuff going on, this is like one of the craziest off season for like trades and signings. To not have a deal or anything in place or numbers thrown out, then I think the ship has sailed.
Right.
Unless they're going to throw him a ridiculous contract, that's the only way he's staying in Baltimore. But I think after I watched what he went on to LeBron's shop and all that, he is going somewhere else.
All right, so Rick Garrett chimes in. He says, I don't know anything about the cap stuff, but I read a comment on a fan page saying Lamar is hurting the team by not signing because he's holding up $23 million cap space. Is that true? Yes and no. Yes, it's hurting the Ravens in the immediate for this year, because if they signed him to an extension, they can backload the deal, they can put money together in a signing bonus, which lowers his cap number this specific year. So to answer that question, is it hurting the Ravens this year? Yes. But at the end of the day, this is $23 million for a top 10 even starting quarterback in the NFL is still a bargain of a deal. It is eating up a decent amount of cap space because of the way the contract is structured. This is his last year.
I do just have to say, Drew, you got a shout out from Steven the Seavers. He says, "Hey, Drew."
What's up, Steven?
Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. How's Epcot going?
Couple other things that he touched on in his interview. He actually was asked about whether he had any urge to sell the team, because there's a lot of rumors going around with Biscotti, being that he was so quiet and he hadn't really said anything to the media and all that stuff. He said, "I'm not going anywhere. Right now, I'm really happy with it." He is, first and foremost, a businessman, right? That's what's made him successful. But, he just, like, to your point and what you said, he is not a front and center guy. He's never been a front and center guy.
He's not Jerry Jones.
He lets the people do their jobs that he pays them to do.
That's how it should be.
And that's exactly how it should be. And that's why I think the Ravens are ran so well. It's the Biscotti or the Jerry Jones of the world, the Daniel Snyders of the world. They're all piss poor ran organizations. Why? Because their owners make it about them. And that's what I love about Biscotti, is he's not that guy.
Speaking of a guy that makes it about him, fucking Lockenfora. Did you see his comments this week?
No.
About the team and about how they're being cheap?
Oh, no.
So he went off and he was saying that the team was being cheap, right? It's all started by a local insider. Yeah, I put that in fucking air quotes, Jason, if you're watching. Because
I love it. I hate that.
You're part of the downfall of 105.7 The Fan, and you're doing this because you think you're trying to get back at the Ravens because they ghost you on shit and you're not an insider. That's why. But no, he comes out and says the Ravens have a lot more holes in their roster than normal. Baltimore is 24th in the NFL in spending, including 13th in the AFC. Lockenford doesn't seem to be doing. It says it doesn't seem to be doing enough to compete for a Super Bowl. He then retweeted saying, the Ravens entered the week 13th in the AFC and in 2022 payroll, haven't gone over the cash over the cap since 2016. 7 AFC teams already there this year. Are they competing for a Super Bowl or dropping back in the pack? Here's what I'm going to tell you, buddy. We've still been competing. Despite the season that was last year before all the injuries, this team was 8-3 with no starting running backs, didn't have one of your starting corners that was one of the best corners in the NFL, and you still turn around and pull off an 8-3, and then when you had more injuries, you just couldn't sustain it. But the thing here, it's being smart. You're being smart with your money. Why go overpay some of these guys? And it's not like they haven't tried, right? We tried the whole cheap mentality, right? I guess you could try to label that as Za'Darius Smith. No. We were trying to be smart. Za'Darius said, "Oh, okay, I'll take it." It was the market that came back and is the reason that he didn't take that deal. But the other thing is, if you're not being smart, if you say we're being cheap, then being cheap isn't looking at Bobby Wagner.
All right. Before we get into Bobby Wagner, I will 100% agree with you. Jason Lockenford is a fucking moron. He's an idiot. Here's the thing.
This could be the first time ever that someone chimes him in to listen to this show and he actually hears this.
I don't give a fuck.
Hope he does.
I hope he does. He is a fucking moron, and here's why.
You know what? I'll say it here. He's brought down Ken Wyman.
He's mostly talking about 2022 right now, right? How early are we in 2022 right now, right? We're not even to the NFL draft yet, okay? Yeah. There's a lot of money that is still going to be spent by the Ravens, but they're going to do it the way the Ravens have always done it. Are you completely blind to what the Ravens have done for the last 20 years? What do they do when they go through free agency? They typically make 1 or 2 splash moves, and then they hold off. They wait to see all the guys that are still pending in free agency that aren't getting the deals that they expected to get, or they wait until cut day when rosters go down and you start getting veterans that are cut. That's a big chunk of money that they're saving that they're going to spend on those guys, because you're right to a degree. They do have multiple holes that they need to fill, but they can't do that. They can't fill them with one big splash guy or spend a whole bunch of money right now. It doesn't make sense for the Ravens to spend money right now with the way that their cap is written, or the way their cap space is. They will do it, and they always keep an allotment of money under the cap aside for random signings that they have to make during the season because of injuries. They never spend to the top dollar of their cap to have that emergency fund. They have been doing this for 20-something years, Lockenford. How long have you been in the Baltimore media now? You should know the progress of things. Part of it's the way it's always been.
Part of the CBS guy, he ain't local no more. I don't say that he's on a local.
Fucking moron.
Part of the thing with this too, right, is What happens? What you're not telling people is what happens.
Garnett, and we don't do void contracts. Right. Absolutely.
What happens? That was Garnett, not.
That's what I said.
Yeah,
I thought said ID. But
how did you hear?
I don't know. I read ID. She said that.
Two headphones.
Yeah, exactly. No, one of the things that you have to think about with this shit too is there is a penalty for going over the cap, meaning. You can go over the cap and spend more money, but guess what you got to do? You got to spend more fucking money because there is a tax, if you will, or a fine, if you will,
doing what the Saints do,
and
it doesn't work for the Saints either because look where the Saints are. Just probably the same amount of playoff wins we've had since our Super Bowl. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and I've heard that hang up lately with the Ravens. You know, the playoff success. Okay, but that's what I say. Like, you go with that kind of strategy. Look at the two mats to sit there and keep paying. We're going to get to them later on.
Right.
Tight end.
Right.
As a quarterback, and they keep playing these weird void games like it doesn't even exist. Not everybody's going to do that. Not everybody should do that. It doesn't make sense. And if it doesn't achieve you anything anyway.
Right. Exactly. No, I 100% agree with you. Now, to the cap talk. There are ways to create more space. We've talked about this, right? There's some big contracts that could be restructured that have to be agreed to. One of them would be Ronnie Stanley. Is he really in a position right now to agree to any kind of restructure? We don't know what's happening with Ronnie Stanley. He's probably going to stay pat if I'm him, right?
Can we get an insurance claim on him, please?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, we'll talk about what Harbs had to say about him in a little bit.
You got a couple of cornerbacks, some high-paid cornerbacks that could restructure their deal and open up some cap space there, which would make a deal with Bobby Wagner possible and still not completely deplete all of your cap space if they made those moves. What the Ravens are trying to do is the Ravens are trying to play this game smart, like the Ravens have always done. Pat Morardi and crew, this cap team that they have, they've always done a great job with this. And to Garnett's point here, what the Ravens are trying to do is they're trying to get Bobby Wagner on a 2 or 3 year deal. Why? Because then they can lower the cap number up front for the first year and spread the money and backload it out. Bobby Wagner wants a 1 year deal for $11 million, which means all of that money is going to go against the cap in 1 year because you can't backload a deal. It's a 1 year deal, right? So the Ravens are letting the market play out. They've made a competitive offer to him. It's 2 or 3 years is probably what the offer is. And Bobby Wagner needs to either agree to that or take less money with the Rams or take less money with another team because nobody's going to pay him $11 million, not yet, or he would already be off the market. That's what's happening with the Bobby Wagner deal. Now, is Bobby Wagner the right fit for the Ravens at that kind of expense? I think he brings a lot of value to the team. We all know what Bobby Wagner is as a middle linebacker, right? And we all know how much better Patrick Queen was as the will side linebacker. So I think it's an immediate upgrade. Is it the biggest quote-unquote need that we have right now? No. Obviously, edge rusher is our bigger need than our middle linebacker. But you can address outside linebacker through the draft and have a really young tandem of outside linebackers early in this draft and sign Bobby Wagner, right? If that is your plan. We'll see what happens with the draft, but Bobby Wagner is still a potential and a strong potential for the Ravens to sign.
By the way, for everybody that also wants us to always go up to the cap number, let me share a piece of information with you. The outstanding champions from this past season won their championship with their active roster making up 65% of their cap space. They could have gone out and gotten whoever the hell they wanted. They didn't need to. Sometimes you have to value the guys that you have, and you have to treat them well. And if you do, long term, maybe they make a discount, whatever it may be, or you're smart with your trades or your picks, whatever it may be. But you don't need to spend over the cap to win a contract. We're not the Yankees. We're not the Dodgers, when it comes to baseball. You can be smart and still win. That's the nice thing about a cap. Is it creates... What's that?
People don't believe in that, and then they look at what the Rams did. They franchised everything just to win 1 year. Now they have nothing to get back this year.
And to talk about the Rams, I know you're bringing them up. Sorry.
No, you're good.
That was also in the chart. So that good side that I was talking about, the top 4 teams in there, Kansas City and the Bills, which, you know what I mean, they had that fight.
All the playoff teams in the lower end corner?
Not exactly. It was a good chunk of them. But it was the Bengals and the Rams were in this thing. Okay? So that paid off for them. But that had to do with injuries. Everything that LA did, it was a little bit of luck. Matthew Stafford stayed on the field all year long. Yep. You know what I mean?
When historically he doesn't.
They're at 94% on the cap for this year, by the way.
My point being,
like New Orleans.
it just goes to show you, like, if they would have had key injuries to these key players that you spent 5 first-round picks on, if Jalen Ramsey goes down halfway through the year, if Matthew Stafford goes down halfway through the year, they're not in the Super Bowl. If Burrow's getting hurt again, or they lose Chase or something like that, they're not making it to the Super Bowl. It still has to do with luck.
Yeah.
Not to mention the only. Bad injury they had was Robert Woods, and it was the perfect timing that they had just brought in his replacement. How lucky can that be?
I was starting to ramble too long.
That's my point too. Is we'll never know how good this Ravens team potentially would have been, bearing no injuries. Right?
Yeah.
And that's every Super Bowl team. Every Super Bowl team has a little bit of luck on their side because they didn't have the catastrophic injuries that ruined their year. It was a bad year for the Ravens with that. It was a good year for the Rams. Rams went to the Super Bowl and they won it, right?
Yeah.
It is what it is. The Rams are not in as good a fucking cap space as they were, but they're still set up to succeed. They did keep Matt Stafford, so as long as he can stay on the field, they're going to be competitive.
Last year they leveraged that, though. That's what I'm saying is last year was 65% of the cap. Right now, as it sits right now, 94% of the cap is where they're at. They're one of the tops, and they still have a draft. You got to get through the draft. You got to do all that, and then anything you're going to do at free agency. If Aaron Donald's truly gone, how the fuck are you replacing him?
Right. Exactly. That's true. Well, Harbs had a presser at the league meetings yesterday, so it wasn't just Biscotti that was talking to media. He did acknowledge that the Ravens are talking to Bobby Wagner, but are also looking at everybody, the whole political answer that Harbs always gives you. Calais Campbell and Acosta apparently are still talking regularly about the potential of him coming back. I think Calais, I said this before, it's just kind of playing the field, right? I don't really think it's anything about money for Calais. It's who gives me the best chance in one singular year to win a Super Bowl. And whoever that team is, whatever contract they offer me, that's what I'm going. He loved his time in Baltimore, and I think the Ravens want him back, obviously, but if another team comes, if the Rams come, if somebody else, if the Bengals come, that could present a challenge whether Calais stays here.
I was going to say, he also could be sitting back and kind of saying, okay, let me see what everybody does in the draft.
Right.
And then I'll figure out where I'm going to go based on who's willing to give me a contract.
Right.
And I'm sure there's plenty of teams that are probably knocking and picking up the phone and calling Calais' agent. But I think he's steadfast on seeing, let me see what because what else does he love to do? He loves to mentor guys.
Yeah.
He loves to mentor guys. And so
he'll do that no matter where
he will. But if he looks at a team and says, well, shit, that team drafted this top tier guy, right? Let's say it's Jermaine Johnson. Let's say the Ravens do draft Jermaine Johnson. He could be kind of going, it's a potentially contending team and a guy that I think has a lot of talent and I could help mentor.
Yeah, potentially. We'll see. I mean, he also talked about Odafe Owe, said he should be good to go from off-season shoulder surgery, so that's good news for the Ravens because outside linebackers, a lot of question marks with Tyus Bowser being hurt, right, and Pernell McPhee most likely retiring. They talked about Pernell McPhee. We'll let him make that decision and announcement when he's ready to make it, so to me it sounds like he's hanging it up. We'll see. Didn't have any updates on the Lamar contract any more than what we've already talked about, but he'd love for something to get done. He's confident it's going to happen and know he's going to be our quarterback. That's always the answer that we hear from Harbaugh, right? Again, the political answer. But
Seattle said the same thing.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I took away from Harb's presser was something we talked about, all the injuries, right? Mm-hmm. And what are the Ravens going to do differently to prevent that from happening in the future?
Steroids.
They're changing their practice structure after the rash of injuries last year. Part of that is not doing joint practicing anymore, so they won't be doing the team-to-team practice, which essentially is adding another preseason game, right? And that's basically what joint practices are, because it's
and guys 11 are more likely to push themselves a little bit more in that situation.
There's the competitive nature of it.
I mean, how many fights have we seen break out at these joint practices?
Exactly. He also said that a lot of like the ones-on-one drills won't be happening, which is also a situation where you typically get like, I got to beat this guy. You got the best of the best going up against the best of the best, and certain things can happen during that. So they're changing the way that is. Ronnie Stanley, he gave an update, said he's doing well, but Ravens will play it safe. So, to me, that says we're going into the draft with under the impression that Ronnie Stanley's not here, and if there's a top tackle available, we're going to go that way. That's safe to me.
I hope that that's what they're doing. I think they're also saying that they're not pushing right. You also have Moses that you signed. We don't know. I think he's
right
to play right tackle.
He's
So
right tackle.
We did that. Let's just keep him at right tackle.
yeah, we've done that before. I get it.
He's right
Yeah,
tackle.
but let's just keep
He's
it
right
right
tackle.
Well, we kind of learned, that is going to be the case with the other piece on Macari. But I think the other thing with this is when it comes to Ronnie, one of the things that he was saying, he'll be there for the season, meaning they're gonna take it to the wire and see how far he is before they go make a decision.
I personally don't think that's going to impact their draft strategy. Their draft strategy is probably
You gotta get a tackle somewhere.
Tackle, outside linebacker, and offensive line outside of tackle, right?
Yeah.
So those are probably going to be the three biggest needs, or even DB, right? DB because of the money and some of the age and stuff
Depth,
like that,
yeah.
and depth. Those will probably be the three priorities. And I don't think if one of those top four tackles are sitting there at 14, I don't think the Ravens will hesitate to take another tackle because they got to plan for the future. They can't go into another year not having your $100 million tackle there. You got to have somebody.
But it's got to be a guy
Can't
that's
be
got
an
experience.
Alejandro, Villanueva replacement.
It's also got to be a guy that's got experience at left tackle. You can't.
It can be experience at the collegiate level. Those top 3 or 4 tackles that are available in this draft,
They're
if they're there, they are
left,
day one
yeah.
starters, and they're left tackles, all
Yeah.
of them. So he did talk about Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Said they're making progress, but will likely start camp on the PUP list. Said the Ravens will play it safe with both, which again also makes sense. I already saw Gus Edwards on a stationary bike, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he's making progress there. These are two guys that I don't think they need a ton of reps to be ready. Running backs are kind of that unique nature. We've talked about it before, where that is probably one of the easiest positions to transition from the college game to the NFL. You usually see a lot of guys, rookie running backs, come in and make an immediate impact right away, right? It's kind of the same thing when coming back from an injury. I know these are two big time injuries. I would rather them err on the side of caution with them and give them those extra couple of weeks if that means they're going to be fresh and build that strength back up and
build
not
that
have
muscle, build that
complications.
ligament, get them used to it. Keep the lateral motion going strong. Don't let them do it, because the last thing you want to do is get them out there too early. They make a bad cut, or not even a bad cut. They make a cut and wind up doing the same thing, which to the same leg, it's rare. It usually winds up being the other leg because you've put so
Compensating.
much You've also put so much strength and conditioning into that one leg that you've lost focus on the other one.
That's true.
So
OBJ.
Yeah, right. He did. He was also asked about Derek Wolfe, right? That is kind of the anomaly, right? We talk about wasted contracts.
I think everybody's asking about that.
I mean, a back injury sucks, especially for somebody doing. I mean, it sucks for anybody, but somebody that does sports for a living and you're a defensive lineman, your job is to get through 350 pound plus guys, right? If you've got back injury, that's usually a career-ending type thing. I mean, he was hunting buffalo that were 2,200 pounds or whatever the hell he was doing. So obviously he's out about doing things, but we'll see what happens, because he would be a nice addition to that defensive line if they can get him back, because they sorely need help on that defensive line.
Yeah, and that's one of the things he said, that he'd help us a lot. I hope he's back. I think he looks and says this is somebody that makes an impact, to your point, and there's a difference when he's not on the field. Very similar to when B-Will wasn't on the field, which is part of the reason they brought back Michael Pierce to kind of hopefully fill that hole a little bit. But Harbs also, was asked about the whole centerpiece, right? We all know Bradley Bozeman. We would have all loved to see him come back. Crazy
Especially
1 year
after the
North
1 year
Carolina
deal he signed,
but at the same time, they feel that it's internal. And he mentioned Macari will likely be the starting center. Said signing a free agent center is very unlikely. Doesn't stop them from still making an impact in the draft to find a center, which still allows Macari to be a flexible guy that can bounce in and out. But you've got to. I don't know that it's that early. I still think you could get a center maybe later in the draft, a project guy that could sit behind Macari.
That's the route they'll go.
And that's what I was going. I think they'll go that route because I think Macari. But the only thing is Macari becomes very valuable at being able to flex if somebody does get hurt. So if that does happen, I do expect if somebody on that offensive line were to go down for some reason, Macari's coming out of center and Castillo is going back into center.
So I think the Ravens are a little bit more comfortable with Macari at center than we originally anticipated. I think all of us as fans are a little
gun shy on center.
Gun shy with him specifically because of the Buffalo game, right? The Buffalo playoff game. He looked terrible, right? And that was the one where Lamar Jackson got nailed in the end zone, and it was a bad look for McCarry. But outside of that one game, he's played well. He did a very good job at right tackle, but you bring in Moses, right? So Moses is going to be your starting right tackle bearing injury, or Dwan James maybe as a right tackle. That puts McCarry at center, and I'm more comfortable with him at center than I originally thought I would be. Linderbaum is a day one starter if you get him in the first round, but I think the Ravens now are committed to McCarry. You'll see them go with one of those fourth-round picks. They have a plethora of fourth-round picks. Get that, like you said, middle-of-the-tier kind of guy as another option, maybe a guard-center combo kind of guy that can play either position as a depth piece there that can move in if McCarry doesn't do well.
I think that's a good point. Looking at somebody that has that versatility at guard and center, because what are you going to when you have that guy? If McCarry is a little bit more of a longer term fix at center, you also are going to need somebody to fill what Zeitler is. Zeitler have 1 year left, one more year left on the contract, or is it 2
he's
years?
got a couple more years.
Zeitler?
His was like a 4-year deal.
Was it? I thought it was a 3-year.
I thought it was 3.
It's 3 or 4, something like that.
But
he's got a couple
either
more
way,
years.
you're going to need somebody that you can also flex over there. A, if he goes down, or B, if
Garnett, it's a good point. It's a possible smokescreen. We've seen that from the Ravens before too, right? Where they talk something just so that people don't think that they're in the market for a center. That's potential.
Linderbaum at 14 to the Ravens.
Just everything that I see about Linderbaum is he is a day one starter and he's the best center in the draft. But I think if you see the Ravens trade back at 14,
then they're looking at Linderbaum.
And
that's exactly how I would play it if I needed him.
Right. I don't think that they take Linderbaum at 14, but if you see them move back, that's the play.
Yeah.
That's my opinion on the draft. We'll see how that shakes out. But one of the things, speaking of drafts, right, which we're going to do another live mock draft next week. There's just so much to talk about, especially with the Biscotti interview and everything. One of the mock drafts that I thought was pretty interesting. So The Athletic did a mock draft with all their writers, and depending on the writer, they drafted for their potential city, right? So Jeff Zrebiec is obviously the Baltimore writer for The Athletic, and he was the Ravens representative, and he ended up drafting at 14. There were no trades made in this whole thing, and they ended up picking outside linebacker Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State, who is a guy that we talked a little bit about a couple of weeks ago, but we haven't really deep dived because I was 100% sold on the fact that they were going to go offensive line. They were either going to go tackle or they were going to go center, preferably center. Now that they've made that commitment to McCarry, unless it's a smokescreen, if they made that commitment to McCarry, I've started to look at some of the outside linebacker potential. Jermaine Johnson, you pair him with a guy like Owe. Listen to these stats. He led the ACC in sacks last year, 11.5. Tackles for loss at 17.5 in his final collegiate season. He also was dominant at the Senior Bowl, which the Ravens are always present at the Senior Bowl, and they've always put a lot of stock in how players do there. So statistically and everything that you see, he's got a lot of jump and he's got a lot of get off on the line. It would be a nice tandem to have him with Odafe Owe. The only reason I bring this up is because I know a lot of you guys in here have different opinions on who the Ravens should draft, right? So I wanted to look at this mock to see who was available at 14 and who wasn't available at 14, so that way we can make the decision of whether this was a smart pick or not, right? Trayvon Walker, the guy that we thought might be there, he's
really rising.
It's rising. He went number 3 overall in this to Houston. DB, Sauce Gardner, right? The top-rated DB in this draft. A lot of guys want.
Cincy.
Gone at 7 overall to the Giants. Derek Stingley, the other cornerback out of LSU that was highly rated. Gone at 12 overall to the Vikings. Ojabo, we all know what he blew out his Achilles, right? So his stock plummeted. He wasn't taken. He was still on the board, but I don't think anybody thinks the Ravens should be taking Ojabo now with an Achilles tear at 14. That's a second-round type of commitment. 4 tackles gone before the Ravens pick, including Trevor Penning at 13 to the Texans. So the Texans got Trayvon Walker and Trevor Penning in this draft, but all your top 4 tackles are gone in this draft. So you're not going offensive tackle at 14. That's why I say
there's one name
outside linebacker was a premium position at this point. You obviously missed out on Zadarius Smith, right? So you have a big hole there. It's an absolute need for the Ravens. The one name, and Ryan, I know I'll let you have the floor on this one. The one name that was still sitting there,
Davis?
Jordan Davis,
exactly.
the defensive tackle freak at the combine from Georgia.
I did have a copy of it, and I was sitting here going, is Davis there?
Yeah.
Is Davis there?
So, based
By the
on
way, it's in front of you.
Okay.
so based on that, that's the conversation I wanted to have here. Like, are we getting too caught up on Jordan Davis, the athletic freak that he was at the combine? Because I'll be honest with you, none of you motherfuckers in here knew who Jordan Davis was until he stood out at the combine. That's the only reason. Outside linebacker, we all know, is an immediate need. It is a need that they've had for years. All we've seen them do is bring in cheap veterans, the Justin Houstons of the world, the
Hole fillers.
Pernell McPhee, right. You drafted one in the first round last year in Odafe Owe. It would be real nice, in my opinion, to get a tandem of outside linebackers that could be here for
the next
5 years. Well, 4 for Odafe, unless you use a...
I say the two of them combined for 4 years.
4 to 5 years, in totality. It would be real nice, and for it not to impact the cap that heavy.
I'll throw it over to Ryan first.
I mean, we knew who was the national championship no earlier than that. I'm not going to lie any earlier than that.
All right, there you go.
But
That's where my hand went up.
we've been doing this whole speed thing with the Ravens, the Justice Hill. That don't work. You know what works? Speed and size. DK Metcalf always works.
Right.
I sat here pounding the table. If you're giant and fast, you win. If you're one or the other, it's a gamble. You could be great. If you're giant and fast, it is a game breaker. I think that he's a great pick there. I don't think he'll be there. I think that the only chance we have is because wide receiver has gone so nuts this year that a bunch of people start drafting wide receivers a little bit earlier, and that we get to trade down to either Green Bay or Kansas City and let them come get who they need. That's the way we collect picks.
Before the couch chimes in here, I'm going to sell you on why I think Davis wouldn't be a bad pick. And it's to your point. It's everything that you described.
Why is he selling us on
big
Davis?
and fast? Because I want them to make their an educated decision on which way you go here, right? Big and fast. And I haven't heard anybody else compare him to this guy, but where I'm going to compare him to, Warren Sapp. Warren Sapp
100%.
was a huge man, but his get off on the line was fast, and we're talking about a Hall of Fame type player.
Unstoppable. Yeah.
A Hall of Fame type player. Now, granted, the game has changed a little bit since Warren Sapp was in, but to Ryan's point, speed wins more times than not. I understand most of the time he's not going to be in pass situations, so the amount of snaps that you get out of this guy is probably going to be limited, but what do you value more? Do you value having that tandem at outside linebacker young, or do you value replacing the hole at defensive tackle with somebody young that can be fast and be athletic?
To your
that
point, real quick, speed kills, especially on somebody that's backpedaling, which is what an offensive lineman does.
But I don't know if your point of him being off the field is really that true, because I think that he has shown enough pass rush ability that you could leave him on the blind side of any quarterback, and if they're that worried about Odafe Owe on the other side, all he's got to do is get 2-3 yards of push. He doesn't have to get there. He's going to be brought to him. So I don't think he's as much of a deficit in the pass rush as we think he is.
Couch, what's your opinion on the two?
Good.
Jermaine Johnson.
We'll take Odafe.
Yeah, we'll take it.
After our disappointment last year, we'll take him.
We'll take a clone. Jermaine Johnson or Jordan Davis at this spot
At 14?
at 14.
All I know is I'm bringing my popcorn to the draft day. The way that we know the Ravens, they probably won't pick any of those. They'll go a different route, trade back.
I'm going with
whatever.
Davis or trade back. That's
Right.
what I like
But,
about
But if you're making the pick at 14 and those two guys are on the board, what do you value more?
They'll probably value more, probably not get that and get like a linebacker or something.
What do you value more? Not what are they going to do? Davis, and why?
Speed kills, and he's a big guy, but he can fucking move, dude.
Yeah. Drew?
Yeah, I mean, I've been sold on Jordan Davis, so I'm not gonna say that's my pick.
We sold them all!
No, I've been sold. When we were talking about it a couple weeks ago, I started looking into more. And,
it was Garnett and Fred that were in love with Linderbaum.
Yeah.
So I love Linderbaum, but
He's limited.
I think he's gonna be. I think he's gonna be a great center right off the gate. But knowing when they signed McCarry, I said it to you guys last year. When he got the extension, he was going to be the center next year. and that's already look at what it is. So I think if Linderbaum's there, I don't even think if it's a trade back. If they trade back, I don't think Linderbaum. I think there's no smoke screen. They're going with that. They'll try to do this patchwork offense that they do. At that point, I'm with Reback on this one. Jermaine Johnson. It would have been a jobbo for me. It was real. That was like my pick for them until the injury.
You can still get him.
So, but I'm still thinking like. It's gonna have to be a tackle, but if you're like going off of the Dreebacks, with there being no tackles, I have to stick with him on that one with Jermaine Johnson because getting another top tier edge rusher to take the pressure off other guys and Oweh is a fucking must.
Appreciate that, Joe. Joe just said this channel needs more subs. It's great. Great show. Appreciate it, man. But Gerard chimed in and said, I don't think they'll take a center or guard in the first round. They never have before, so most likely a defensive player. And I think that's a good point that we didn't bring up, is that historically the Ravens have found the most value on offensive linemen in the second, third, and fourth rounds.
Yeah.
It's been some of our more successful linemen that we've been taking. So to take him in there, how much of an impact is Linderbaum over the next guy behind him? I can see Linderbaum falling, which I think, to your point, if they trade him back, they know he's going to fall. So I think we're kind of all on the same page, but I just wanted to address that. That's a good point.
I agree with your point. Historically, they haven't. I think that if Moses wasn't available at the price tag that he was, that's the only reason Makari moves to center. Makari was your day one right tackle if they don't bring in Moses. That freed up Makari to move to center, which then takes the need for center down some, which is why they won't draft Linderbaum, in my opinion, now. But I think if Moses wasn't there and they couldn't find a dumpster dive at right tackle that they felt confident being their day one right tackle, I think that there's a strong possibility that they take Linderbaum. To my point, I think they would have traded back for him and gotten some more draft capital for him, but just because they haven't done something in the past doesn't mean that they won't do something in the past. And Eric DeCosta is a GM of his own. He's not, yes, he was tutored by obviously one of the greatest in Ozzie Newsome, but he's not Ozzie Newsome, right? So it's a possibility that could happen. Go ahead.
I will say, like, the best case scenario, well, maybe like two scenarios for the Ravens is people fall in love with these quarterbacks no matter what. I mean, you got some there are some to Seattle and Carolina. They need quarterbacks. Wide receivers too, like
wide receiver. Everybody needs them.
Ohio State guys, like, you know what I mean. There's a few 3-4 top wide receivers that people could get. I think that's the best case scenario for fans to look at, like almost kind of be hoping, like, all right, yeah, everyone falls in love with Pickett and Willis, and maybe even Coral falls in there somehow. Someone trades for us,
Every wide receiver and quarterback draft.
I think our biggest hope for at least having that pick of the litter is that scenario.
Well, make sure you tune in next week because, like I said, we're going to be doing a mock draft.
Do a mock draft with the group here, and then I think we're going to try to do a few more throughout the month of April and have some guests on to do this with us. So stay tuned for those.
It's time for the Liquor Stop social media shout out. Ryan, who's been chiming in the chat room, who's chatting it up.
All right. Well, we got Chuck Summers with the first as usual. My man's got some quick fingers over there.
I saw Stephanie in there too.
YouTube's connection. Stephanie was third. Stephanie pulled it in. She got the medal.
You got two Summers on the podium. I like it.
Vinny Figueroa, which I've never seen that name out there. So welcome, Vinny. Craig Zerio, Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Short, Garnett West, Joe Carlozo, Rick Garrett, Marcus Wells, Adeep Mahood. Garnett West had a comment, said that we are doing too much, in my opinion, for Bobby Wagner. I bring that up for two reasons. Yeah. Apparently he thinks that we're doing a little too much dancing in this whole thing, which is kind of fun. But then everyone stopped watching us, and they just watched Garnett and Joe Shipley out here fight with each other for about 30 minutes, arguing back and forth about that comment. So I think that we were the sideshow for the Garnett West and Joe Shipley show.
I missed it.
So Joe's telling us we need some more subs for his own show. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Appreciate it, man.
Flock Nation, Jared Blackwell, and Joey Boombats round out our commenters.
All right. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Scott. What did Jerry and the crew hook us up with this week?
So this week was actually a pretty cool set. So Peabody Heights Brewery, we've had a few of these before, including the infamous Mr. Trash Wheel beer. That was
Sure, that's not what this is.
relabeled. It definitely tastes different.
It tastes different. It's good.
But this is from Peabody Heights Brewery. This is a mixture. So it's a 6-pack. They released this 6-pack this week, and it is a mixture of 3 different beers named around the Baltimore Orioles and that area around Memorial Stadium, as well as Camden Yards. So you've got the 30th Street Brew, which we have here. So this is where they originally were held a long time ago. So this was actually pre-Memorial Stadium. That's where this comes from. Then you've got the 33rd Street Hazy IPA.
That one's one I'm drinking. It's good.
And it's pretty good. And then you've also got the Utah over there, which we haven't cracked open yet.
It's good.
But that's the Utah Street. So you tasted the Utah pretty good?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So all of them are hazy IPAs. It's just
Pretty strong, 7.2 and 7.3.
And yeah, they're just slightly different. I guess it's the hops that they're using in each one. But I tell you what, every single one of us, the first thing that we said, I think James was the first one to say it. These cans were filled to the brim.
They are. Yeah, you don't get that potato chip bag effect on this beer. It's the opposite of
and it
that.
ain't like foam. They're straight liquid all the way to the top of these things. But these are pretty good. They're 7.3% a pop.
Yeah.
So they pack.
7.2.
Well, that one's 7.2. This one's 7.3. What's the Utah?
7.2.
7.2. So still not bad and pretty good flavor there. Make sure you guys send them to Liquor Stop, or make sure you guys go up to Liquor Stop, 1510 Conoway Road. Tell them Birdland BS sent you. And also this week, all growlers. If your all growler fills, 15% off up there.
10% off anything else, 15% off growlers. Go get it out. All right, Ryan, it's been a minute since you and I have had a chance to do some Shell and Tell together on Birdland.
Yeah. We put out 2 shows this week in the regular Shell and Tell.
We did. With Shell and Tell, we put out a couple episodes, including a special guest interview with wide receiver Ty Felton, which was great. So if you haven't had a chance to go check that out yet, make sure you're subscribed to Shell and Tell on all your podcast platforms of choice, and check out that latest episode with Ty Felton because it's very telling. He's a good kid.
Yeah, it was a fun interview to have for sure. It's always great to get a player on the podcast. I know their time's very valuable. Whenever they speak to us, we're very appreciative.
Right. So let's take a little bit of a trip around the athletic programs with the Terps.
Campus, like the first day we met, Fred.
That's right. Let's start with the best.
This is going to be a long walk.
The best program. Now, we're going to be quick on this. The best program with the Terps right now, and that's got to be the men's lacrosse team. 8-0 now after opening Big Ten play with a big win over PSU, 18-7.
Yeah, they're just rolling, man. They've honestly, unlike most of the sports at Maryland, the out-of-conference play for lacrosse is probably harder than the in-conference play. The Big Ten is taking leaps and bounds in lacrosse. There's still some ranked teams and some hard things we're going to get past. Of course, Johns Hopkins fakely joined the Big Ten in lacrosse because they get to just choose wherever they want to play for every sport.
Great.
So that's going to be the final hurdle in the last game of the year to pass. But it's really big. The Villanova grad transfer Keegan Kahn led the team with 4 goals. He said, forget a hat trick, I'm going to add some more.
Yeah, that kid's super fun to watch. I mean, he's got a lot of moves in the bag. He doesn't go to the same thing. You'll see him do a lot of pump fakes and wrap around guys. You'll look like he's throwing low, but then he goes top corner. This kid Kahn is really, really good. He's fun to watch. And let me tell you, this 18-7 win, as dominant as it sounds, it was 18-3 before the Terps pulled their starters out and went in with the backup. So this was even a more dominating game than the score leads on.
Yeah, and they also got to show that you can't just sell out and double and triple team our number 1 threat and try to beat us, because that's kind of how Penn State tried to play it.
Because we are bad at lacrosse.
He's still got 1 goal on you, and everybody else dominated. So you don't get to triple our number 1 threat.
All right, so let's go around the court a little bit and go to the hardwood, talk some women's basketball, as their season ended on a loss to Stanford in the Sweet 16. Obviously, you can't ever say that a Sweet 16 loss is disappointing, but it's a team that returned all the starters, had high expectations going into this year.
And last year.
Right. We all thought that maybe this would be the team that at least gets to the Final Four. They come up a little bit short, but again, a loss to Stanford, one of the best teams in the country.
Yeah, one of the best teams in the country, probably one of the ones that will cut the net down. It was the number 1 ranked team in their section in the area. So the region, that was the word I was looking for. We already talked on Shell and Tell how Angel Reese had one hell of a game at 25 points. More good news came after I started watching the post-game pressers. Not news, but opinion here. Junior Diamond Miller, who many thought would have been going to the WNBA this year. She's got all the tricks in the bag, one of the best players in the country, was quoted as saying, "I think the better team won today, but I love these girls, and I'm sticking with them till the end."
Nice.
And the only way I can read that after the end already happened for this season is the Dante Demas, I'm coming back. So, bringing Diamond Miller back with Angel Reese, the future's bright. You always have a chance with women's basketball at Maryland. So it should be good future.
Absolutely. I mean, that team, like I said, having those two in the fold, at least for another year, that's going to be competitive. Brendan Freese is always going to
field it.
She's always going to comb the transfer line, too, and I'm sure there's a lot of top-level talent that wants to come here for this program because Maryland always puts together a good basketball program on the women's side. But staying on the hard court, let's talk a little bit of the men's, which we did talk about on our latest episode, the hiring of Kevin Willard out of Seton Hall. We went in pretty depth with that, so if you want to follow us on that, you can listen to that latest episode, a whole nother episode.
Will Willard win? We posted that on Sunday, so it's 2 episodes ago.
But what we talked about on that was that if this deal or if this signing makes sense, the way it makes sense is if the assistants around him make sense, right? And they finally put pen to paper and signed a couple assistants, I think, that make a lot of sense for the Terps.
Yeah, we're still waiting on a third to happen, but the first two are in. You got Cox and Skin, both local coaches, both with the DC Assault and Team Durant and all the AAU teams around here. Big-time high school programs we haven't been able to get into. Again, if you want real detail, Ahmed and us sat down this Saturday and talked in depth on all of this. Great content. Check it out.
Yeah. We got to talk football. There's some good news.
Let's start good, man. I almost cried when I got texted.
And some bad news. Like we said, the interview with Ty Felton went good. Talked a lot about spring ball and his expectations for this coming year because Ty Felton is a guy that was probably a little lower on the depth chart, but we've had some major injuries at the wide receiver core, so he's going to have a good opportunity to shine. And this is a kid that has a good track record. I mean, he had an injury in high school that hampered him. He had a knee injury in high school, but before that, the numbers that the kid put up as a sophomore were outrageous. He's a track star, meaning the fact that he can run with the best of them.
Yeah.
This is a kid that could potentially shine and ultimately show that he can be a contributor to this offense.
Yeah, and that's what he was supposed to be. Like you said, the sophomore stats had them being offered all around the country. We were fighting against the big boys. The things that kept Maryland in the game is he had an ACL injury. Maryland kept talking to him, and a lot of the big wigs were like, okay, we can find somebody that still has 2 knees.
Right.
So that kept us in the game. We got him here, and then unexpectedly to him probably, he's buried in the depth chart because we have some of the deepest wide receivers rooms Maryland's ever seen before.
Right.
So right now they're all sitting out, getting healed up, getting ready for fall. So he wants to show that he really deserves the work that he wants to get this fall and to be a part of both this year and the following year as it kind of thins out a little bit and gets people moving on to the next level.
Right. Now, I heard a rumor. We talked a little about lacrosse. Former at this point, lacrosse star might be making his appearance on the team.
Yes, the best lacrosse star of the nation, the Thornton Ward winner, after playing for Ferris State for this last year on his 6th year, where he changed sports, led them to a national title. Obviously, Ferris State's pro day is not going to go very well. There might be a couple teams there. Maryland's going to have a few more teams there. He wants to up his chances. Maryland has graciously accepted his to come and run at our pro day to get a little bit better look.
And we're talking about Jared Barnhart here.
Barnhart,
right?
yep.
Yeah, that's awesome. But we got to talk about the bad. It's not so awesome.
We just cut it right here, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the bad's real bad. We got 4-star. Some say he was a 5-star.
He was a 5 until he committed to us. That's how it works.
Damian Robinson, Chop Youngbull, entered the transfer portal. Local guy out of Quince Orchard. Played 1 year in limited play last year. Was projected to be with the ones this year. Unfortunately enters the transfer portal. Rumors are potentially USC or even Oregon.
Yeah, Ahmed texted us all this about 8 hours before it happened. I was like, bro, you got to hold my hand when you say shit like that. I don't know what you're doing. Yeah. We can't text that this early in the morning. The top 3 guys from our number 18 rated class are gone. Now, Jennings was pissed off at us about the way his injury was handled, and he left on his own, which did hurt. Terrence Lewis was reportedly requested to leave. That wasn't actually someone that we lost. It was just his antics weren't worth the juice. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze.
Right.
So he was asked to leave, but by no means did they want Chop off this team. He was a huge part of our plan this fall and going forward, and it hurts a lot of different ways.
And if there's rumors, there's the people that believe that it's this NIL that is basically crushing college football, college athletics to begin with, but that it was money induced. That's one side of it. The other side of it is his stance, which Ahmed confirmed to us was legit. It came from Chop himself, that he wasn't happy with the positional coaching that he had at outside linebacker. And this is kind of the conversation I had with them, is that when you talk elite level prospects, and Chop is an elite level prospect, it's a 4 or 5 star. These are guys that have day 1, day 2 aspirations for the NFL draft, right? These are the elite of the elite. You want a mentor and a coach that's going to best prepare you for that leap. School comes second. And I think he didn't feel comfortable with the coaching and the tutelage that he was getting here at the University of Maryland. I think that maybe, obviously, we have a top-rated outside linebacker ready to go in the top 5 from Oregon in this upcoming draft. I feel like he thinks that maybe his opportunities to be coached and better prepared for the NFL come at another school.
Yeah,
it sucks to hear that, but I believe
it. But I still put it on the money. I think that his boy Caleb Williams from the same recruiting class right down the street, they were the 2 hot shots from Maryland, just got straight paid to get out of Oklahoma. Norman, Oklahoma, you were never going to get Chop to go to Norman, Oklahoma. But if you're talking to Caleb, who's tweeting you and texting you all these like LA 10s that he's hanging out with his $1 million NIL deal and all the free crap he's getting, so much so that he's giving the women's basketball team $300 speakers for each player, I think you start going, I want to go hang out in LA with my boy. I want to go live like a pro athlete before I ever even get to be a pro athlete and live in like the life of luxury and get to do whatever. Who wouldn't want that in college?
Potentially, right?
Why,
it's a 19-year-old kid. Why couldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
But like you said, it is going to absolutely destroy college football because, yes, there are schools that make far too much money on these kids and that they're going to be able to afford to do this. But it's a very small minority of schools.
Right.
Like, Maryland's a huge university. They're not going to compete at all at this level, no matter what. No matter what you bring your donors back, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
The USCs, the UCLAs, maybe. But basically it's the SEC because they've been paying players for 30 years and they're used to it.
Yeah. The only positive, if you're going to pull any positive out of this, because there's really none.
There isn't, because he was the vocal leader for that class. We could not be seeing the end of this.
There isn't a positive out of it. But the one thing that does come from this is this does open up a scholarship. There are still plenty of players in the transfer portal, and obviously we could peg another player from another team to help fill this void. We don't know what that's going to be yet.
Loxley said today the transfer portal giveth and it taketh away. And every year he says you're going to lose 30% of your people. You know, this year we got pretty lucky. We talked about Jennings was a loss. Gote was kind of a loss.
That was definitely a loss.
That was pretty much it until today. And there's been many, many years that we could make that a lot longer list that people are leaving for.
I'm going to contribute here for a second to the
Terps
segment. Shall tell, because you didn't mention one sport that I think we do have to mention because of how they finished last year doing so well is the Maryland baseball team.
Oh yeah,
right. They did really well, and they've started
this in our other episode.
This year they started 19-5 as of right now. As of today, they whooped up on Towson. I felt bad for Towson, 26-8.
Yeah,
it was pretty bad.
The difference is the out of conference schedule for baseball looks like you would assume a bad team is, and then all of a sudden they're not that bad a team and they're still playing a bad team out of conference schedule. So it will be interesting when they get to play more of the division rivals.
Well, and right now they're undefeated at home. They're 10-0 at home.
Yep.
They're 8-4 away, and on neutral sites they're 1-1. It's not a bad start.
They've got pitching too. It's
and
keep them in all the games.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're not ranked, and I think they're just kind of getting going. They've had some good series wins. I think a few weeks ago last week I think it was. I forget who it was. It might have been Campbell. They took the entire 3-game series, beat them all. I think they lost. One of the losses was to Delaware. Delaware, but they beat Delaware in another game.
Yeah, they lost to the Texas Baptist.
Dallas Baptist. They lost one to them.
Craig Zero.
You just made that team up.
Craig Zero, it's Drew, and it's not even a competition.
Hey, so I could contribute too. I got a question.
Yeah.
See, every now and then I pay attention.
I motivated you with the
Every now and then he doesn't pee during this
I
segment.
was motivated even despite the Iowa loss last year, and then you guys just like, okay, maybe after all these players are leaving, maybe not. So, do we know when spring game is? Yet
30th. April 30th.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going with you.
All right.
We're there.
We're definitely going to be there. We're
just
probably
wanna
going to
go.
be doing a live show from the tailgate lot at Ben Page. So whether it's live or recorded,
Old Line
we don't
Tailgate.
know yet. Old Line Tailgate.
Buy your tickets to Old Line Tailgate, $20, all you can eat.
Lot 1, we'll be doing something remote for sure. All right, fellas.
Put me down for that too.
All right. We'll make it a Shell and Tell and Birdland outing. It'll be fun. It's time for some bros, bows, and O's, man. We're 10 days away now from the opening series in Tampa, 13 days away from opening day at the Yard, and me being shit-faced outside of Pickles Pub like I am pretty much every year. I'm looking forward to it. Even if the expectations aren't high for this team and there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered and all that stuff, it'll be good to have baseball back in the Yard.
It's always a day. It's always an event. I still don't get like why at this point the city does so much for it. The state loves it. The governor's there every year. The mayors are there every year. Just make it a holiday and cancel schools and shit, please. Like
Yeah.
it just makes it easier.
I'm super excited for the Viagra sign that's going to be on the new big wall out there.
Those aren't going on the wall. Those are going on the uniforms.
Oh, uniforms.
Right in the crotch. That's where it's going to go.
Closet.
Blue show.
No, look, I'm excited. I'm really curious to see the view from my new seats at the same time, like what that's going to feel like, what it's going to look like. Really curious. Do we see on opening day? Do we see the first home run in that area?
Yeah.
Right, because that's going to be A, worth something, but B, it's going to be telling if guys are still hitting them out and we're not seeing the doubles that everybody's expecting now. It's going to be interesting. There's going to have to be some answers, which we're going to get into the
100%. We're going to at least over under 30 times this year that we're at a game and we say, "Oh, that would have been a home run if the other wall was still there." Over 100%.
Then we'll have over under in the park home run.
In a park home run, maybe in that corner. I would say two. Two that's affected directly by that left field.
Over under 2, but I'm calling for 3. I'll take the over on 2.
You just don't ever see.
I'll take the under.
Park home runs.
I'll take the under on that side of the park home run all day.
That is a weird corner, bro.
It's 30 feet, and yes, I get it, but that angle, it's going to kick off that wall and kick right to the player now.
Yeah.
Go back.
But here's the thing: if it's going to that corner, all it takes is one person to go, "Well, bam!" into the corner of that wall.
That's what I figured.
That left field
That corner is going to put a left fielder to sleep, and then it's on the own side of the park home run because the center fielder's got to find it in his hole.
If Stevie Wilkerson was still here,
All right. Let's talk a little bit about what's been going on in spring training right now. The Orioles are 5-5-1 on the spring so far. They had a loss yesterday to the Phillies 7-1, who did start most of their projected opening day lineup. So this is a really good test to see where the Orioles were. They did get some of their young pitching out there, and some of their young pitching looked really, really good. Yeah. Dean Kramer, who was a guy that was up and down last year, most of the time when he was up here, he didn't look very good. Then he went down to AAA and got things together. He'd come back up here, he didn't look very good. Was topping out at 95. He had a cutter in the upper 80s and a changeup and a curveball. Struck out 3 batters in the first inning and induced 3 ground balls in the second. The third was where things started to fall off. He had a couple of home runs given up with a cutter that caught too much of the middle of the plate. So these are things that he's going to need to clean up and get better with. But again, this is against the ones from the Phillies, and the Phillies have a stacked lineup.
The thing about this, though, is that it's also spring training. This is where you play around. This is where you develop, and get that extra pick, see how it's working. So I'm sure he takes something away from it, and hopefully when we see him again in a day or two, we wind up seeing something that's a little bit better. It's the aura of spring training. As we say, 5-5-1 means jack shit.
No, it doesn't. It means absolutely nothing. But these are the things that you look for. Is you want to see improvement with some of the guys you've already seen, and then you want to see what some of your young talent that you haven't seen yet looks like against some of the best, right? Kyle Bradish, a guy Drew has been very high on. We've all been very high on. 2 innings pitched, 2 hits, 0 runs, 2 walks, and 3 Ks. Good job of working around an error and the walks that he had, because he did have the bases loaded in 1 inning.
And we'll get to it in a minute, but not impressive enough.
Well, we'll say, listen, the numbers were good. Topped out at 97.4 mile an hour. Hasn't allowed a run now in 4 innings that he's pitched. Looked very, very good, in my opinion, getting out of trouble, which is going to be a big test for this team. Yeah. Even if he ends up starting in the pen, that's a good sign.
The other thing that we saw was the other big name in DL Hall, right? He came in, 2 strikeouts, topped it out at 100, was averaging 99.1, 15 pitches, 9 of them for strikes. That's a pretty good ratio. Yeah. You're hoping that as you get better with that, some guys start chasing those ones off the edges.
Who's the last left-handed pitcher you can think of that could hit 100? Anybody?
Randy Johnson.
There it is. That's the last. I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, how often do you hear? No. I'm just thinking.
What are you talking about?
I'm thinking of left-handed pitchers. I'm like, how do you never hear? Usually, left-handed pitchers, you think of more of the finesse kind of guys. You don't hear like the power pitching left-handers. Randy Johnson was the last guy I could think of.
Did you look it up?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I was just. This was me just thinking out loud.
Kershaw left-handed?
Is he?
Hey,
I don't know.
While we're doing this,
Did he
Craig
top the
Zero,
100?
you got to make these questions harder because Fred wins the chug contest 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Give me a harder question. Let's go. Barbecue is Drew. Chug contest is Fred. Give me a debate.
But this is a really, really good sign from DL Hall. This is a guy that's coming back from an injury last year. He had just really started ramping things up over the last month and a half. But to see him hitting at 100 mile an hour, obviously the juices were probably flowing and all that stuff. This isn't the expectation. I expect him to be in that 96 to 97 mile an hour range on a regular basis. Yeah. But the occasional ramp up to 100 mile an hour is pretty sweet.
The ability to fluctuate is good, and it's not over. You're not over pitching at that point.
Right. Exactly.
Good, Drew.
Nah, I was going to say, you think about like the last couple big prospects that the Orioles had with Bundy and Gossman. They weren't hurlers. They were pitchers, and you know what I mean?
Well, Bundy was a hurler in high school, and then it just never worked out for him.
When you look at like a DL Hall and Rodriguez, you know they're going to be able to hump it up there.
Yeah.
They can hit on a consistent basis.
Right. No, that's true.
So, one of the I'll call it...
What?
So where are they humping it up?
Humping it up there.
One of the I'll call it a little bit of surprise. I don't think anybody saw this, right? But again, it's spring training. So take it for what it is. I think I saw somebody else chime in when we were talking about Hall, and we said take everything for what it is. It's spring training. Ramon Urias leading the way offensively with 3 home runs so far.
Jake Fox 2.0, 3.0, 4.0. How many times did he do it in spring training?
10 home runs in spring training.
He did. Listen, Ramon Urias, I think he's a good depth option. I don't think he's an everyday player, in my opinion. I think he is a little under the radar from what fans give him credit for. I still think Odor is going to be that opening day starter, in my opinion. I don't think he's the long-term answer at second base. I don't think Urias is the long-term answer at second base. Those guys are Jordan Westberg and Vavra, some of the guys that are down in the lower tiers of the minor leagues. We'll see that in the next year or two. But you're right. I mean, listen, you're going to play the hot hand, right? And if he continues this streak through the rest of spring training, maybe he is day one starter.
And Fred, just to get you update, Kershaw and Bumgarner can both throw 100.
And they're both left-handed?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't 100% sure. I just couldn't think of it when I was trying to think of it.
They're in the National League, that's why.
Right. That's true.
They can hit home runs, too, I think.
I just remember that Randy Johnson hitting that bird and the bird exploded.
That was like the anniversary 2 days ago.
That's great.
Showed that.
Fucking amazing.
Now, another guy that I think a lot of fans have been waiting for, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Yusniel Diaz, right? This is the prime piece like we talked about in the Manny Machado trade. We wanted to see something out of this kid. He is leading the way on the team right now in average, hitting .375, 1 home run, 4 RBIs, only 16 at bats, so it's a small sample size.
We'll talk about the news here in a minute.
But Diaz was not included on the roster any longer, so this was kind of surprising to me. This is a guy that I thought, well, he's earning his stripes. He's doing the things that we asked him to do, but he hasn't been able to prove himself even at the AAA level. So I'm in agreement with this move and not having him on the roster because I feel like he needs to prove it at that AAA level before we give him that shot.
I think a lot of people think
we have a lot of option at outfield.
I was just saying, you have the depth out there. You have, Hayes is your everyday left fielder. Mullins is your everyday center fielder. And as of right now, Anthony Santander is your everyday right fielder. They have determined that. It's if you go look at the site, they move it around every once in a while, but the depth chart has stayed consistent on the starters for the most part.
Norby, right. I couldn't think of his damn name. Thanks, Steven. Norby.
So I think it's going to be interesting. Another guy that we were hoping to see a lot out of this spring, but little bit of a slow start. Now, granted, he's been there longer than some of these other guys. Yeah. Is Kyle Stowers. Was hitting 105, a home run, 2 RBIs in 19 at-bats. Again, not that impressive, right? But again, it's also spring training. Let him go down. I think it makes sense, as he goes down as well. I'm going to get into in a minute all the guys that they did send down and then they made cuts, but
he will absolutely be in the mix for the outfield before season's end. He will not be a guy that's on the opening day roster, but he will be in that September call-up mix, if not even sooner.
He could provide you a depth piece at some point.
Depends on what the goddamn Orioles do about DJ Stewart. Let that motherfucker go. Thank you. Amen.
Yeah, he just needs to go. We've talked about it at ends. So one of the things that, before we get into the cuts and everything, one of the things I wanted to kind of get your opinion on, at just a simple grade, is how you would grade this offseason for the Orioles. And I saw the article by ESPN's David Schofield, and he had some thoughts, and he graded all the teams before the regular season, before regular season games even played, right? So he talks about the Orioles specifically, the additions and re-signings of Jordan Lyles, Ruben Odor, Robinson Chirinos. He said he's willing to give them a little slack because it's the AL East and it's a tough road. He understands it's a tough road in the AL East to be competitive there for a longer period of time. But he's looking at the farm system, guys like Adley and Grayson he thinks are going to pay dividends, but he was surprised by the Ruben Odor, as we all kind of were. But again, it was a depth piece. It creates a little bit of a stopgap for some of these young guys that just need that extra little bit of time.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense in that. And then you say, he made the mention that, people say that this lineup isn't actually that bad. Well, the Orioles were 14th in the AL in runs scored last year. So at some point, you need to show progress. So he gave them a grade of a D-.
I had a D the whole time.
I was going to say.
I was holding a D on my hand the whole time.
I 100% agree with this rating. I wouldn't give him an E because they actually brought in a couple of guys, but the only one that even remotely gets me interested is Lyles because I think he adds actually something to the starting rotation. Odor is not an answer at second base. He's like you said, he's a stopgap. Chirinos was an addition because Chirinos, whatever. I don't even know his name. That's how Churros. Churros are good. I love them at the ballpark. No, I think that he was a piece that they needed. They had to.
We need to make him a churro shirt now.
I'm for it. D-. I'm right there with him.
Swinging a churro.
So
it's my son you're talking about. I'll smack you in the face.
My thought would be is if everything was true about the true interest in Correa, if there was some way to verify that we actually had that 10-year, $300 million offer out there, I'll upgrade them to a D+. Because at least you made a fucking effort.
Semantics.
My teachers have been upgrading me to D+ my whole life. It never helped.
Yeah.
Hey, that signing would have doubled our payroll. Simple as that.
All right, so let's go to the couch. Go ahead, go to the couch. Yep.
It's a D. It doesn't fucking matter. They didn't really.
We all put the D on it. What do you got, James?
I always stick to it. Everything Elias has ever said is exactly how it's played out. No one's gonna like it. You're gonna be the fucking black guy of the league. Keep dealing with it. It is how it is. Hopefully you turn it around. I mean, that's the plan. I mean,
Elias is a genius. He gets to be shitty at his job and be like, I told you it was going to be shitty.
This is what's going to happen. I played this plan out for you. We're going to be bad for a really long time.
This was the plan all along.
James, what's your grade?
My thing was it was a D+, but then became a D when they put the wall back 30 feet. But like you said, Fred, why is DJ Stewart still on the team? He wasn't Elias' project. and they just keep on bringing this fucking guy.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand.
It was fly that won't get out of your goddamn way. I don't
just
get it.
cut your
It was
losses.
2016 the first rounder, like,
And he's getting
it's
old.
It's the old regime.
He's
There was a
not young
Duquette
anymore. He's
signing.
old.
I mean, if anything, so.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a top
Was
10 or
told
whatever.
40 is good for fielding in left field. What would you give Stewart? A 4. He's awful. I mean, he's Jose Canseco awful. Like, he just looks like an idiot in the outfield. Yeah, he's just bad. That's one of those first
But he
round
can't
picks you
even
just have
hit.
to admit.
Like,
that
it's
he's
not
just
like you're
bad.
hitting.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I know. Left-handed, like every now and again, he'll go on a streak where he's got a little bit of pop, but outside of that's the only positive that he brings. He's just bad overall. All right, well, update us on the roster cuts.
Yeah, so this is the big piece here. Right,
roster cuts.
Cuts. You know, it's all words. Whatever. They don't control
We're
us.
bringing the D to the roster cuts.
Brought plenty of the D's to the roster cuts.
So look, they made some significant cuts after Sunday's game and the win over the Tigers. Rylan Bannon, the surprise one to me, Jahmai Jones gets optioned back down to the minors. Being that I thought he was the guy that was in most competition, he was the guy we were calling for last year,
And it didn't work.
Yeah.
It just didn't work, and I'm curious to see does he go down, work on some things, and then they bring him up later in the year. We'll see. They also sent to Norfolk left-hander Kevin Smith. He's our number 18 prospect.
That kid
per
looked
the
good last
pipeline.
year. I like Kevin Smith a lot.
You've got infielder Taryn Vavra that was also optioned, and right-hander Logan Gillespie was optioned to Bowie versus being to Norfolk. Catchers Brett Cumberland, Maverick Handley, infielder Patrick Dorian, which is a guy that we've talked about. Outfielder Robert Newstrom, another name that we've talked about. Again, the depth in the outfield is strong. Left-hander Nick Vespi, and right-handers Marcos Diplin, Cody Sedlock, and Grayson Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Were reassigned to minor league camps.
Yeah, I mean, Grayson was never going to be on the opening day roster. Like, that was just wishful thinking. The only one I thought out of the top prospects that had a chance would have been Adley before the injury, but even that one
It
didn't
just
happen.
seemed a little early.
Maybe. Listen, I'm all right with him. He's gonna wherever he pitches, he's going to get the time and the experience.
Well, I mean,
that he
you
needs.
got to remember, he's the top-ranked prospect. But some notable names that were still on Monday with the team were Kyle Stowers. You had Keegan Aiken and Michael Ballman were still with the team. But we had some unexpected additional cuts this week. So you have Yusniel Diaz, who's sent to the Tides. Kyle Bradish sent to the Tides. Alexander Wells, a guy that did spend some time, especially the latter half of the season last year, up and didn't look horrible.
No, he looks better as the year went on.
He goes to the Tides. D.L. Hall goes down to Bowie. And then you also have catcher Chris Hudgens, who was your depth piece. Right now, you really don't have another depth guy that's on the active roster at catcher.
Right.
It is Chirinos, and that is it, because Adley is still counted out of it since he is recovering from the injury and rehabbing from the injury. So very interesting that some of these names aren't making their way in, given that you're not carrying Adley. There's an extra roster spot.
Here's what you got to look at for this season, and I saw somebody else mention this on Twitter. It's what got me thinking. You gotta put in perspective what this year is going to be, right? And we all know that this team's not going to be competitive, but will they be better than they were last year? And what type of better are you comfortable with, right? They were a 52-win team last year, right? Mm-hmm. This has 2009 vibes written all over it. You remember 2009, that's when Wieters, Reimold, Tillman, Mattis, that whole era began. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to start to see that this year with some of these top-level prospects. We will see Adley at some point. We will probably see Grayson at some point. We might see D.L. Hall at some point. We might see Kyle Bradish. We'll see some of these names come up, but don't expect immediate results. Don't expect these guys to come in and light the world on fire. For me, a 10-game improvement would be sufficient to me. Going from a 52-win team to a 62-win team this season. 62 wins still sucks. Don't get the job done. But 62 wins is 10-plus where they were last year, and I think that's success.
Anything above 60, I'm content with. Mm-hmm. Anything above 65, I'm starting to go, okay. Anything above 70, I'm going, this is a good year. This is a good step, right? Because you're making a jump of almost 20 games in 1 year. Not a lot of teams can usually do that without dumping money into it.
Not a lot of teams have 20 games to gain either.
There you go, Ryan.
True.
Go down to Hollywood or Horseshoes. Put $100 on the Orioles winning 72 games.
No, thank you. I'd rather bet the Talia for Heisman.
I'm not saying 72 is completely out of the realm. I think that could happen. There were a lot of games. You got to remember too. The Orioles lost
one-run games,
right? So you bring some of this better offense in, and,
Bigger ballpark,
right? A lot of those home runs don't happen, right?
Well, when your guys can't exactly hit the ball that far, it makes it a little easier for them to get those doubles.
There was some. I think there was some kind of stat that I read that they were talking about the new wall, and it was 12 home runs of John Means against John Means wouldn't have happened.
I think it was 18.
Or 18, whatever. It was a big number. Yeah. That's a huge number off of one pitcher.
A lot of his
wouldn't
home
have
runs that
happened.
he gives up. Even in opposing ballparks, a lot of home runs he gives up are in those
first couple of rows.
Yeah.
So you take that into consideration. That changed a lot of those one-run ball games. John Means is back in that 20-win kind of category, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be nice as hell, man.
We'll see. Hopefully, he can finish a full year healthy and fully 100%. We'll see.
Yeah.
All right, fellas, it's time for this week's rundown. Scott, I'll let you kick this week off.
So this week, we're going to start with some Patriots information here. As Bill Belichick said Monday, Matt Patricia, the former Lions head coach and former Patriots defensive coordinator, will now be a part of the team's offensive coaching staff in 2022. So he's bringing him back. But he's also bringing on board, this one doesn't make sense to me, he's going to partner alongside former New York Giants head coach Joe Judge. Judge was a failure
as a head coach.
Yeah.
What did he do as an offensive coordinator?
Josh Daniels was a failure too at one point.
As a head coach.
This is true. But no, they're going to bring him on. To me, they're trying to make up for the departure of McDaniels, going over to Vegas to be the head coach. It's going to be interesting because this is a guy that's defensively set, could actually help you prepare offensively a little more. So I can kind of see it. You can protect against certain packages, but I just don't know that it makes sense with these two. But then again, Bill Belichick calls the shots.
I was
anyway.
about to say, I'm not going to question Bill Belichick and his personnel decision. It's a guy, he knows a lot more about all those people and what they bring to the table than we do. It's interesting names in interesting positions, but Bill Belichick will make a figure.
Patricia and the Detroit Lions, you definitely think offense.
Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. All right, so Taysom Hill is in the news. The heir apparent to Drew Brees.
The guy they paid like crazy.
The guy everyone said would be better a quarterback than Lamar Jackson. Right, that guy. Well, he's making the switch over to tight end.
Is it a switch, or is it just kind of that's what I've been doing?
We're just changing your title on the website.
Well, you got Jameis Winston coming back from injury. The Saints signed the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, to a 1-year deal today. He's going to go to tight end now. Now, listen, it's a little intriguing. I mean, he obviously can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can catch the ball well. He's a big guy. He's got some speed to him. I think he fits the tight end mold.
He can also still do some trick plays there.
It's nothing new for him, but here's the fact. His new contract was structured to pay him like a tight end from the beginning. So this was always part of the plan. But the deal will essentially make him a top 4th most guaranteed money at the position day one. The amount of money that he's going to make in guaranteed money will put him as the number 4 paid tight end in guaranteed money. That's insane for a guy that hasn't played the position at the professional level yet. Is insane to me, but we'll see. This has a lot of familiar vibes to it from one.
Here we fucking go.
One Tim Tebow who couldn't quite cut it as a quarterback.
Really? Because I'm pretty sure he took his team to the playoffs.
Hey, here we go.
Taysom went to BYU. He had Jesus on his side too.
We'll see. Listen, best of luck to Taysom Hill. Hopefully he can make a career out of it.
All right, let's throw it over to Drew.
Drew.
Taysom Hill, Jason Lockenfor's wet dream. Final Four.
It's the Lock It For a Hate Show.
Second to last March Madness recap from me. Final Four will get underway on Saturday.
Yuck.
I'll say, hey, hell of you tip your cap to number 15, St. Peter's. First time this 15 seed, has ever made it to the Elite Eight. Then they got their ass kicked by UNC.
They did.
Who didn't see that coming?
Shout out to Ravens fan C. Burr, by the way, who is leading our league and demolishing everybody.
So the yuck comes from you get old UNC versus Duke. Yeah, everyone loves.
Guarantee an AACC team in the final.
Yeah, it is crazy that I think they've had like 250 some meetings in their matchup history, and like this is the first time they've ever faced off in the NCAA tournament.
And it's Mike Krzyzewski's last year.
Yeah.
Why didn't you let me put money on this?
Did it right.
I did not let you put money
You said
on
I'd lose my Maryland man card.
You're a man. You make your own decision.
You should have let him do it and told him he has to then donate the money to Maryland.
I did it for Kentucky, so I probably would have been better off doing Duke.
You would.
The other side would be number 2 Villanova versus number 1 Kansas. So
great game.
Cut and dry it is. You've had your Cinderellas. You had your Miamis do their thing. Like in Arkansas, but it still comes down to the Blue Bloods yet again.
Yeah.
Right.
One little side note with the Caps, Nicholas Bastrop just had his 1,000th career game.
Nice.
So that goes hand in hand with the success that we were talking about with the veteran last week.
Yeah, I love Nicky, man. He's a great player.
Good, James.
Good, James.
So the NFL approved the overtime rule, so no more crying now, hopefully, about these fucking teams that make it in there and they fucking lose in overtime. You know, you have 4 quarters. That wasn't
Crying will persist.
Yeah, that wasn't good enough. We need
They'll be
more time. So they approved the rule only for postseason. It's not like regular season, just postseason. So, all the Buffalo fans out there can have a chance now.
Buffalo's got to be feeling good, man. They got the
stadium.
$1.4 billion stadium is approved, which isn't a dome.
Yeah.
What are we doing in Buffalo? But apparently Josh Allen really likes the Colts.
You literally lost to a team last year that had like 5 yards passing.
You're right.
So what the rule is, everybody will get a chance to touch the ball. So no more what was it, 1 year?
Score a touchdown, golden death.
No, it was Mahomes didn't get to touch it against Brady.
Right.
And then last year, Josh Allen just sitting there showing his head down, waiting to look like he was going to go in.
That game was insane.
And then get a chance.
Insane.
But my thing is, this rule's stupid. Like, you have a defense, you have an offense. Defense meant to stop, just like offense is meant to score. So they had 4 quarters. They didn't get done. And now they can say, hey, now you get a chance. So they were talking about now, like, after you scored a touchdown, do you go for 2 because you know they're going to get the ball anyways? Or do you leave it like that? So, or do you defer?
Right.
When you winning the coin toss, do you defer it? So we'll see how it is. I'm not for it. Like I said, I guess I'm just old school where, like, you got 4 quarters to do it. Fucking put it in the end zone and have your defense
you definitely defer.
Well, on top of that, they made all this big deal. It stems from the big deal of the Kansas City Bills game.
Right.
Kansas City, the following week, went to overtime, got the ball first, and he threw a pick, and they lost the game on a field goal.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. You still got to play the goddamn football game one way or the other. So it was, you know what I mean?
Just all these trophies are
my whole thing with this, and I'll be quick, it's just the rule changes. When do the rule changes fucking stop? It's the minute that somebody starts griping about something, it depends on who you are, they get put up for votes. I'm all for, like, certain games, baseball being one of them, changing for the betterment of the game. But these little things like this just annoy me that they change year in and year out. That's just my opinion on it. Ryan, you're up.
All right. Well, my favorite person, Tiger Woods, is back into the news.
Oh, this will be fun.
Tiger, rumored back from his second single-car, totally non-substance abuse-related accident. This guy gets more passes than a NASCAR event. My man gets more chances than a $20 scratch-off. I don't understand. I just don't get it. His career should have ended with the golf club through his car hood, and instead he then decided to ruin his life with abusing drugs and falling asleep and wrecking cars and wrecking his body, and he still gets to do whatever he wants and be the center of ESPN's wet dream that golf will someday be a sport that can support them.
Kind of like how Will Smith got away with smacking Chris Rock.
I'm the biggest Will Smith fanboy in the world. That was some dumb shit. He looked like a broken man. We can talk about that after that. So he completed 18 with his son just a couple weeks ago, and he's now arrived in Augusta with his team and has played 18 holes, or rumored to play 18 holes, in preparation for the Masters. People said it couldn't be done, that it's not the course to come back on, that it's one of the longest and hardest to walk courses in the whole.
There's a reason John Daly doesn't do it anymore.
I mean, I don't know how hard to walk courses has been ranked for people that aren't injured in single car accidents that destroy their life, but apparently somebody already thought about how hard it is to walk this
What's
course.
the Masters without Tiger Woods?
It was fine the last couple of years. It's been all right. We got lots of young
Tiger
players.
Woods is
that,
ESPN's wet dream, but someone won't let it go.
No rules. No boundaries. 2 topics. 30 seconds each. It's time for the 2-minute warning.
All right, fellas, it's time for this week's 2-minute warning. Ryan's asking
I'll go
questions, and I guess you're going to go first. All right, sounds good to me. Ryan, you're on the clock.
All right. So we got this from Barstool's Eric DT.
RDT.
On Twitter. Most parks with interesting iconic features have a name associated with it. Some McCovey's Cove, Towels Hill, Green Monster, Pesky Pole. So what would you name the new weird, dumb-shaped hole in Camden Yards?
You want to hit the button?
Oh, shit.
Wrong button.
Careful.
Fix it. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, I got to do everything around here.
Yeah, you do.
I know that some people say it's a little too early. There's people that are kind of chiming in saying it's too early. It'll discover itself. But I don't know how much longer he's going to be with us. And I know he didn't play left field, but he played the left side, and he was the human vacuum cleaner. I'd love to call it Brooks Nook.
Brooks Nook.
Brooks Nook. It's a little Nook cutout.
I'm just going to go something simple here. So we all know how dangerous this whole thing is.
Really dangerous.
Here we go.
Yeah, instead of Death Valley, I'm going to call it Left Valley.
I like it a lot.
That's what we're going to go with.
Jesus Christ.
All right. Unfortunately, Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins passed away this past week at the age of 50.
R.I.P.
Now that Camden Yards is an entertainment venue, what entertainer, musician, or band, dead or alive, would you absolutely pay top dollar to go see at the Yard?
One guy that I never got to see that I would 100% pay top dollar for. I think he's one of the greatest to ever do it. Taken too early. I would love in a venue like Camden Yards, put him out in the outfield, get him stage out there, full setup. Robin Williams, I think would be hilarious. Didn't go music there. I went with the comedy. I think it would be hilarious to see him. He could sell out a stadium like Camden Yards, 40,000, 50,000 seats, easy. So I would love that. Would be one that I would do.
I'm not going to go with the mainstream iconic names or all the big names that I didn't get to see, because a lot of those guys, I don't appreciate their music because it wasn't my genre. But a guy that I did get to see one time and a band that I loved live, and I'll never get to see him again because he ended his life, Chester Bennington from Linkin Park. That was probably one of the best concerts that I've ever been to. One of the bands that I still listen to on a daily. One of their songs or multiple songs are part of pretty much every one of my playlists. They were an amazing band live.
Carrie would be right there with you with that.
100% for sure. All right, man, good show. We got more in the after hours. We're going to be talking some debatable topics here, so we got a lot of fun still to come.
All right, guys, make sure you check us out on our website, www.birdlandbs.com. While you're there, you can check out all of our episodes. You can learn about each of us. You can contact us. You can also get yourself some Birdland BS gear. Make sure you go check out that store. And if there's something that you see that's not there, let us know. We have access to our store that we can turn things on and off. So if there's something that you're interested in trying to find with the Birdland BS logo, let us know. We'll see what we can do on it. We appreciate you guys supporting us. You can also follow us on BigPlay.com, the Big Play Twitter page, and the download Big Play app. You can check us out on all of our social media pages. Again, if you're here, you found us. Just subscribe, like, share, all that stuff. Leave reviews. We appreciate it. Make sure you check out the audio version of the show, which we put out every week as well. And it can be found on all of your favorite podcast apps, Google, iTunes, Spotify, everywhere. If we're not there, let us know. We'll make it happen. Be sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review while you're there. We appreciate that. It helps us be found when people are searching for Ravens, Orioles, or Baltimore content. So thanks for tuning in. As always, guys, for Fred, Ryan, James, Drew, and myself, we'll see you guys next week.
See you.
It's last call for alcohol.
It's time for the after party.
All right. Let's open up the can of worms.
The situation that put the Oscars and Will Smith and Chris Rock on the map again.
Stephanie coming in with the absolute fire. I've been asked for who's best questions to be brought, and Stephanie Summers of all people.
I love
who's the best baseball catcher?
Not even debatable. This guy right here, the big guy.
I asked you to make us fight. That's the one.
Hey, listen, if we're going to throw accolades out there,
Let's do this.
Okay.
Throw it to them first.
Okay.
You guys answer the question.
Right now?
I got my answer.
They're all going to go with you, so it doesn't matter.
Nope.
Go ahead, Drew.
Go ahead, Drew.
With Scott.
Why?
Here's why. Because heaven forbid Scott's pitcher hits the batter, and then they have boxer Scott on their hands. Because you remember, he used to be a boxer. He was a boxer back in the day. So, you know what I mean? I don't know. Fred might be the bigger guy, might be able to protect his pitcher, but I don't know. One guy was a boxer.
I will say, if you want Scott to be the better catcher, all you got to do is make Carey or Wyatt the backstop. And no balls! We're getting back there.
No! Stop hitting buttons!
I'm not touching any more buttons anymore.
Jesus. What a shit show.
Oh, God.
That's a great question, Stephanie. Unfortunately, we never played each other. Our age gap didn't allow for that, and we didn't know each other at that point in life. So there's no real life comparison between the two of us to figure it out.
Fred knows.
But I mean, if we're talking accolades, I was the only one to get a professional tryout for the Arizona Diamondbacks. We'll just say that. I was 16 years old. That's about as far as I go. All right. Let's talk. Wait a minute. I have an interesting question about the draft this year. Go ahead, Yuri. Throw it in there, man.
Throw it in there. We'll get it after when it comes up.
Yeah.
All right, so open the can of worms.
Yeah. Let's get it.
So
somebody throw out their opinion. Will Smith, Chris Rock.
You guys were chatting. You guys haven't really heard mine.
We all talked about this, just so you guys know, in a group chat. It went south. We had to
got feelings.
We had to.
Nobody got feelings.
We had to put it on the shelf for a little bit. So now we're going to openly talk about it, even though James probably isn't going to say anything. We'll just go ahead and put it out there.
I don't think anybody got in their feelings. I think we all have different opinions, different thoughts on it.
Yeah,
right?
it's never going to change.
No opinion is right or wrong. It's an opinion. That's what it is.
It's an opinion. I think it's all a matter of perspective too, right? And I think that's one of the things that this whole situation. Again, you can call me, somebody that's sitting on the fence or whatever, but I think depending on where you are in the situation, it depends on your view of it. Some people, anybody in this room or any room that tells me they know exactly how they would react in that situation is absolutely full of shit because you've never been in that situation. So for me, I look at it and say, we all know that they've been going through a lot of shit. Mm-hmm. Him and his wife. We know
more so him than the wife.
Yes,
she's getting the better end of the deal.
Yeah, a lot of things have been going through her.
Yes. Wow.
So you've got that. You've got and it's not a necessarily serious condition in that it's life threatening, but she does have the condition with alopecia, right? So she got up in her feels. He had the reaction.
She's sensitive to it, and I understand that. I get that.
And so for her, she's kind of looking at it and going like, "This isn't funny." Like for me, I also can see like the perspective of this joke went through how many people, and nobody thought, "Hey, she's been pretty public about this alopecia thing and how it's affecting her. Maybe we should run this joke through them." This wasn't a joke that Chris Rock just went out there and said off the cuff. Yeah. This had to go through a ton of people. It had to go through Chris Rock. It had to go through his representatives.
I don't think so,
had to go through ABC.
Did you watch previous years with Ricky Gervais?
And they've said that he went off what the script was.
Like, why can't Chris Rock go off the script?
Maybe he can, but I don't think it doesn't seem like a Chris Rock thing to do. To go off the script like that.
I think he was playing the crowd. The crowd was them right in the front row.
That's kind of exactly.
Possibly,
and that's kind of the MO of stand-up comedians, and that's why I had such a problem with Will Smith's reaction. This was a comedian telling, yes, maybe it was a tasteless joke.
I'm not defending his reaction by any means.
It was a tasteless joke, and I get that, and I understand why she was upset about it, and I can understand why she'd be in her feelings about it, especially if she's sensitive to it.
But you tweet about it later, you don't slap it in the face.
If you want to bark at him and say, we're going to talk about this after,
if he barks first.
Cool, I'm fine with that, and then if Chris Rock keeps coming at him, all right, well then something's got to happen, right?
Yeah.
Here's my problem with it. In the moment, like I said this prior to the show, right? If I'm standing face to face with you and you insult my family, you insult my wife, you insult something, my instant reaction is probably going to be punch because I'm right here with you. And that's my instant reaction. I don't have time to think. He had time to think. He saw his wife laugh, realized, oh shit, if I don't do something here, I'm going to get the raw end of this deal. Got up, walked up on stage, and had all that time to walk up there to think about what he's about to do, and still went through with it. And then at the end of the whole thing, instead of punching the guy like a fucking man, he bitch slapped him. The whole thing was just a fucking ridiculous show.
So many people thought that it was staged. Some people still think.
I did too. I had to watch it 10 different times.
Some people watch it.
I'm leaning more that way the longer I watch it. Because
if it was staged, why would you do it earlier in the show to make people tune in? Oh my God, they're hitting people on the roster. I don't watch now.
That's not what I'm saying though. I think that it was staged by 3 people. I think it was staged by Will, Jada, and Chris, and they're the only people that knew it.
They're not close anymore.
I don't know, man. It's just the fact that Chris let him walk up on him like that. So therefore, he thought it was just going to be like.
I think Chris thought
expect to be
it was going to be funny.
Exactly.
I think another comedian's coming up to make something funny.
And that's why I thought it was at first.
Right.
But then when you watch the slow-mo, my man is grimacing like with the first flinch away. Like there's nothing coming towards him yet.
Did you see what Will did? He
came from the quickest step.
He came from way back here, and then it was an awkward like.
And the reason he was already kind of in that teeth wide open thing, he was laughing because he was looking around.
Right.
And the next thing you know, here comes his hand.
Where are the snipers?
Right.
Yeah. Look, it's interesting. Again, I'm not defending it by any means, but my whole point was we don't know what. None of us are in the shoes. You don't know what you're thinking emotionally. You don't know what you're doing there. I get the point that yes, you can think about it, but who knows? Maybe he started to walk up there. You talked earlier about that. You had that long walk. Maybe he started to walk up there and go, I'm going to punch the lights out of this motherfucker. And then as he's walking, he goes, I can't do that on live TV. I'll just slap his ass.
Nah, he was going to slap him. He lets a guy bang his wife. He ain't hitting nobody.
Yeah, so I mean, that's part of my thing here.
Good point, Drew.
This is a Lifetime Achievement Award for so many reasons. Will Smith had a break. Will Smith's been eating it from
I feel bad for the guy.
Jokes
honestly.
about his son, jokes about his wife and his marriage, jokes about everybody, and then jokes at his wife's expense here. Like, it's a Lifetime Achievement Award. And Chris Rock, this is not the first time he's came after Jada. We've seen the videos of him talking about her boycotting the Oscars. It's like me boycotting Rihanna's panties. We weren't invited.
Right.
Like, this is not the first time. Maybe they had a confrontation like a man the first time, like, hey, bro, I don't appreciate you talking about my wife that way. Fucking drop it.
Right.
And so
and there could be more backstory to it than what we know. But my bigger issue with this entire situation wasn't actually Will Smith himself. It was the non-reaction to what Will Smith did. If that would have been, I don't give a fuck. If that would have been Johnny Blow, who was a seat filler that walked up and smacked Chris Rock, he would have been tackled, dragged out in cuffs, and taken out of the stage. They let him stay there for the entire show, and they talked about removing him, but they allowed him to accept the award and go up there and make even more of an idiot out of himself.
Denzel Washington and Tyler Perry were like
Bradley
comforting him.
Yeah,
and like who's comforting Chris Rock? Does anybody know?
And James made a point earlier. He was like, that's how the celebrity life is. And a lot of it is unfair. They get extra perks in different circumstances that we as normal people wouldn't. But it doesn't make this right. That's my point.
It doesn't make it right.
Like we talked about in the rundown, Tiger Woods. If that was any of us, we're in jail.
100%.
Jail.
You're absolutely
We
right.
lost our job. No one's coming back to us, and this guy continuously goes and downloads.
You're absolutely right.
Even the baseball fist
100%.
fights. How many times have I sat here and argued with the baseball fist fights that like you can't like just beat people in the face on national television and get away with it? Like it's a non-contact sport. You don't get to punch someone.
I was going to say, sure you can. It's called boxing.
Yeah.
But no, I think one of the other things I was telling Fred, pre-show when he first got here, was there's a comedian. I don't know if you guys know Christopher Titus. I think he's funny. He had a show at one point, but he tells a story or a joke about douchebag credits. And his whole thing about douchebag credits is you get guys, like you had Alec Baldwin, he says doles one out every once in a while and does SNL to make up for it. You have Charlie Sheen, who cashed all of his douchebag credits in one weekend. You have Lindsay Lohan, who's just bankrupt because she's just a crazy bitch as it is. But then you have if the story headline tomorrow was Tom Hanks punches nun, what would all of your first question be?
What did the nun do?
Exactly. So
100%. What did the nun do? What pissed Tom Hanks off?
So, but that's the thing. Is
Woody wouldn't hit somebody.
But Will Smith has been through so much over the past several years, and he's taken everything in stride. He hasn't gone after anybody. Hasn't been like that vocal on some of this stuff.
Been eating a lot,
but he's gotten beat up with it, and so. He hit
Instead
that
of divorcing somebody like a normal person, he did this.
Maybe it cost him too much.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, she hasn't done anything in a while, so that's probably part of it. So,
Big
but
part of it.
At the same time, it's one of those things that you kind of go, well, God, like it makes me think about that joke because I'm like, I feel like that kind of applies to him. It's not that it's a pass for him, but it's like. You got to be going through. This is a guy that, like, he's been stepped on a lot publicly by a lot of fucking people.
And it's his family's own doing.
I agree with that, but I agree with that. It's his family's own doing, but at the same time, that's their prerogative.
And he's allowing for it to happen. Like, he's not stepping up and, like Ryan said, getting a divorce, walking away from it. Like, he's choosing to be in this.
But that's not our call for whatever reason they're trying to stay in it together.
I
get
don't think
that.
they have a prenup. That's why.
I think that's a big part of it. All right, let's switch
back to
gears.
sports.
Let's get back to
Mr.
sports.
Fury
Gary.
asked this question.
All right, Ryan, go ahead and read the question off to us.
All right, so basically what he's asking is, what do you guys think about taking higher risk players to let them heal kind of the Ojabos of the world, the foot injury of the world? Honestly, what I thought we were doing with Hollywood was kind of punting on the draft and just loading up for a 1-year attack with Lamar's last year, I guess, is what he's saying.
Nah, I don't agree with that approach. And I'm not, like he said, I know it's not what you would do. He just wanted to get our opinion on it. I don't think that's the right approach. They're in a win now mode. Like, this window with Lamar is not guaranteed, right? And there's what happens if Lamar is not here long term? What happens beyond that? We don't know, right? So the Ravens are win now. They need guys that can be impactful players right now, especially at pick 14. You don't mess that up with somebody that's a risk player. You make sure it's a slam dunk player at 14. It's very rare that the Ravens are picking this high in the draft. You can't miss on this.
And the other thing too here is when you look at this again, this team, like Biscotti said in his presser or in his interview with the media, they weren't expecting, this team on paper was not expected to be anywhere near 8-3 the way that they were before Lamar goes down. If Lamar doesn't go down, where does this team end up?
Right.
If this team has the long term, the 2 cornerbacks that they need, and the 2 running backs that they need, and the left tackle they need, we could be talking a different story. And I know it's a lot of what ifs, but I think there's too many things that were positive to take from last year to not go, we got to make a run at it this year. If you said that when Lamar was healthy, they were 3-8, maybe I'd agree with you.
Even if you look at those 6 losses, I don't feel like terrible about any of them. None of them were like, oh my God, we got our asses kicked. Other than the Bengals.
Right.
Bengals was it, right?
The other ones were
Outside
close
of that,
games.
they were all close games. So the team is not that far away, but yet they were so many pieces down
My
last year.
head just constantly goes back to the depression that the actual top
I've got
tier,
meds for that if you need it.
the top tier option for the Ravens hinges on Ron Lee Stanley's fat ass getting his Achilles together. Like, that's it. Like, it's, if he's back in and 90% of who he was, there, we can fix the problems. But if that much money is sitting on the sidelines doing nothing, you can't win. You can't do it.
This isn't, maybe you used poor choice of words. This isn't a Ronnie Stanley issue. This isn't Ronnie Stanley poorly taking care of
No,
his
it's just his...
The first time was a botched job by the surgeon. Like, it had nothing to do with Ronnie Stanley.
But it's also just the fact that you're talking about a little tiny ligament that has problems even in running backs and wide receivers.
It's a bad tear.
And you have a giant man that has to be supported by
Yep.
it.
So sucks.
You're hinging on a miracle.
Right, and that's why I think what Biscotti said during his presser it was Harbaugh that said during his presser that we're going to plan to be safe. And if that means drafting a left tackle because one of those top 3 or 4 are there at 14, I'm okay with that. because it's better to have a healthy Ronnie Stanley and an extra left tackle that you can trade for something else down the road if that's the situation and its situation dictates
If
that.
the left tackle winds up working out really well and Ronnie still comes back healthy,
Right.
maybe he becomes a trade piece.
That's what. Were you not listening
So
to
here's
last
the
minute?
opposite way, like
It
trade
did sound like
Stanley.
you said the left tackle that they would hypothetically be drafting, he would be tradable.
No, either
because
one
you'd
of
be
them.
getting
I'm
all
saying
the
either
Ronnie
one of them.
back.
I'm saying
thought you-
if
that's
you're
what
in
I
a
thought. I thought you were
situation,
saying that guy's
I'm just saying
tradable.
if you're in a situation with two stud left tackles, that's a
One
good
of them's
problem
going
to
somewhere to
have.
have.
You can
Somewhere, I
trade
got
that
you.
for something really good later on down the road.
got
That's
you.
my point on that. Go ahead, James.
Two things. You guys probably don't know, but the first one, I just want to say I'm a little sad. Italy did not qualify for the World Cup.
Yeah, they got beat by some like
Yeah, that was our
Macedonia.
Macedonia.
I don't even know where that's
Yeah.
at.
So I'm a little disappointed in that. And second off, I thought it was kind of shocking, but I knew about it was the Ravens. But the Ravens had never had an overall number one pick, and I think Seattle also has never had the number one overall pick. I think it was like 4 teams they said that had never had the overall pick.
We've probably never had a top 5 pick.
Yeah, we
the
did.
highest might be some.
Our first year.
Oh, the first when you got Jonathan Ogden, yeah,
Right.
because you was the expansion, like you were the
Yeah, they
expansion.
changed-
team.
And then
Forgive us
and then
that
the
one.
year that we got was it Jamal wait a minute, Jamal Lewis and Travis Taylor. Taylor was 9, I think.
Yeah, something like that from
So I know
Florida.
Suggs was 10th.
Another
And
shitty
I
product.
think
out of Florida.
Jamal Lewis was like 5 or 6. I don't know.
Fucking Florida.
I don't remember.
Look, we're used to
What
like
happened?
It
Successful
doesn't
being
happen
able to
very
have
often. That's why I'm saying that you can't screw this up at 14. This is why it's so crucial. I don't take any risks on
Yeah,
guys at
yeah.
14.
This- Don't
Trade
take
to
anybody from
17
Florida.
to 20 to 25.
So the only thing I could see them doing is, you mentioned the whole, trading back piece. If they trade back out of, which I hope they don't, but if they trade back out of the first round and then double up in the second round,
You can
provides
trade
them
back
more
and get
because it provides them
You
more
trade out of the first
better
round
quadruple in a
at
second.
14. You know the return that you're going to get on that. Like it's going to be something ridiculous. It's going to take a first, a second, and a third to be able to go to the first round at number 14 overall.
I don't. So here's the only reason I would say that, and I don't know the answer to it because I don't know what it would look like. What is the draft? What is what would the cap hit be for around a number 14 draft?
With the cap hit, the cap number really isn't as significant as it used to be because they got rid of all that like
As long as it's not quarterback,
Okay.
you'll be
overpaying.
okay.
It's yeah, you're fine.
Okay.
The benefit to trading back would be if you ended up somehow doing what you did with the Lamar year, ending up with two first round
rounds.
picks that you can guarantee 5 years of tenure on a rookie
Yeah.
contract. That would be the only way that would make sense. But I honestly, like I said earlier, I think they're dead set on picking at 14. This is my opinion. I think they're dead set on picking at 14 this year unless they go Linderbaum. And that's the only reason that they move back.
Do you see them trading up into the second round with as many fourth round picks as we have?
That's a possibility. That's a strong possibility because they got a ton of.
I think
of
if
picks.
it's there, I think it's early in the second round.
Let's hope it's Nick Cross. We'll see.
You just signed a safety.
That's all
All
right.
right, we'll be fine.
That's all right.
He's got speed. Speed kills.
anything happened.
He's
All right, guys.
He's got biceps, though.
Appreciate y'all tuning in as always.
Teach him how to play nickel corner.
Yeah. We'll see you guys next Tuesday night at 7:30. Mock draft.